Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media Summit. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you all. Now let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. If you haven't already said hi, there is a whole giant, awesome community of people out there. So reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also keep in mind, if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is probably going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's summit, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up, there are going to be lots of cool aha brain light up moments on the summit today. And if you want to share those with your community, we love that. We've made it nice and easy. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's summit will automatically be added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go and explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout the summit today. Now, I will tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be in attendance during the live webinar in order to qualify to win, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the summit today. Now, all of our winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click on the Handouts tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all of your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much, we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's summit, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. The expert speakers and teams will be reviewing all the questions asked after the webinar, which means even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. And if you are a lucky winner here today and you'd like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have all of you here live with us at the summit today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter, LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. And if you're looking for more awesome resources and content right after we wrap the summit today, make sure you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in that Handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. Both you and your coworker could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend, because it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link back in that Handouts tab and fill out the application. The Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys, test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, chat with great people, and learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply or send the link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my all-time favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need all in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. Okay, I have one more exciting resource that I have to tell you all about today. That is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. This is going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and again, completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited and ready to dive in, so let's get going.
Alrighty, hello and welcome, folks. It is shaping up to be a fantastic summit today here as we explore the topic, securing your borders, evolving each layer of your security program. I'm thrilled to have you join me today as we delve into the intricate world of security solutions and strategies. If you did have a little trouble getting into the portal today, apologies for that, and thank you for your patience as we all get things started. This is looking good. So, security. Imagine, if you will, a stack of Swiss cheese. Each slice represents a layer of your security architecture with holes that could potentially allow vulnerabilities to slip through. But here's the beauty of it. The holes in one slice are blocked by the next, creating a robust defense that safeguards your organization from threats. Today, we have an incredible lineup of experts from TierPoint, Zerto, KnowBe4, Critical Start, and DNS Filter, a diverse array of security solution providers who will guide us through the essential components that should be part of your security architecture. Throughout our sessions today, you'll receive a comprehensive overview on the complexities involved in establishing a strong defense, from physical security measures to applications and network security. You'll also discover innovative elements and features of cutting-edge security tools designed to bolster your organization's resilience. Here's what you can look forward to today. Strategies to strengthen every layer of your organization's defense strategy, insights on enhancing incident detection and response capabilities, and tips for optimizing your security investments to ensure maximum protection. So let's get started on this journey toward building a more secure future together. Again, thank you for being here. We're going to cover a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll have our keynote speaker, Evgeny Karam, on stage to get us started. So quickly, once again, my name is Mackenzie Puddesy. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and my friends and fellow moderators, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward, are also here with us on live chat today. And in more exciting news, we have got a boatload of prizes today. Yes, indeed. Today you could win one of 3 PlayStation 5 consoles, one Apple iPhone 16 Pro, which I was hoping to win, but I'm not qualified, a Lego Star Wars AT-AT's Model 75313, and if that wasn't exciting enough, we'll be giving away a $300 Amazon gift card every 30 minutes during today's event. Just a reminder, you must be present and live with us at the summit to win. And as mentioned in that housekeeping chat video this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. Now, one more exciting thing to note, we are also giving away a $50 Best Question gift card during each session. One of the best parts of these live webinars is we have people here, experts from the industry, and you're able to pick their brains and pose questions to them live. So once those questions come in, we will choose the best question from each session and then follow up after today's webinar and let you know if you won the Best Question Award from that segment. So with that, I think we're ready to rock. I'm so excited to introduce our keynote speaker today. We've got Evgeny Karam. He is the co-founder of the Security Architecture Podcast. Evgeny, thanks so much for being here. I am so excited to have you back and hear what you have prepared for us. So why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Doesn't matter where you are. Thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a busy day, and I want to start with a couple of ideas. How do we do defense in depth? How do we create layers of security to make sure we are protected all the time? And even if one layer is breached, we can still have other layers to protect us. I'm Evgeny Karam. I've been around for quite a long time, a lot of experience in cyber, media, and consulting, and many other different things. We'll spend a few minutes to explain where we're going with this, and I will let everyone else to take over to move with you the and explain their ideas and their methodology. As I mentioned about defense in depth, think about a cheese. Every point of a cheese, the water may went go through, but it will be blocked by a different layer. Joking aside, this is the real image how it's supposed to look like. We have many different layers. We have network security, cloud security, endpoint security. Definitely human risk is important and data as well. And it's important to understand that we cannot just rely on one layer. In many methodologies and many ideas, we have this representation of a castle in the past as well, not just cheese, when a castle has multiple layer of defense. The same with cyber. But it's also important to mention that with cyber, we have a corporate security, we have a product security, and we're going to secure it in different ways. And why we need to do this? Because look on how many different attacks and how many different threats are around in our world right now. This is just a tip of the iceberg. There is many more unfortunately that happening, but it's important to understand what are we protecting from. I do want to kind of a bit of an analogy. This is used to be the firewall 20 years ago. Basically, this was the network diagram with one firewall. And if you want to see on the numbers, during this time, we had something like 1,500 to 20,000 to cost of an impact. And right now, we're talking about millions. Look on the speed during this time. It's my phone is working 10 or 100 times faster than we had 20 years ago. Fast forward a bit, we have the next generation firewall that has many different features for network security. And fast forward more, this is how traditional network will look right now. We're going to have network security. We're going to have SIEM. We're going to have UBA. We're going to have SOC. We're going to have cloud security, threat intelligence, SOAR, Active Directory connectivity, endpoint. There's so many different layers and so many different devices that is there. I have an Excel that lists more than 120 different type of devices that exist. How do you actually create these layers? What do you put where? What is the best way to do it? There is definitely a logic to this kind of madness in some cases, and there's definitely a way to create a layered approach to make sure we are secure. We also don't need to forget, because it was quite hard to put in a diagram before, the identity and access management. And there is no really diagram to put it in the network security, endpoint security, but onboarding of people, offboarding of people, how people move inside the company, what kind of access they have, where do we save the passwords and the credentials that are not just usual credentials. All this is part of identity and access management. And now, when we basically have the perimeter everywhere in some cases, how do we protect SaaS applications? How do we protect applications in the cloud? Privileged IDs are still and will be very important. The other part that we want to touch as well is secure software development. I mentioned that we have product security and corporate security. While we're protecting users, there is no really software development lifecycle. But when we're creating products, we definitely need to secure the product. We need to understand how we're going to protect it, where we're going to find potentially issues, vulnerabilities, secrets in the code, how we're going to use APIs. Our APIs are secure, internal, external. This is entire different scheme of protection that's quite important. And because your products may and probably host PII, personal identifying information of your customers or other information as well, we want to make sure it's secure. We have a lot of examples of how people got breached through the application or vulnerabilities inside the application. We also want to pay attention to frameworks. There is many amazing frameworks that exist right now, and I'm not saying you need to have them all. In some cases, you will have a mandate because of compliance, and they will require you to be HIPAA compliant or CMMC compliant if you want to work with some federal administration, for example, or if you're in Europe and not just maybe ISO 27001. And definitely, I like what CIS, the Center of Internet Security, did as well to help everyone. And NIST, definitely. Why it's here? Because when you think about this, you want to make sure your design is aligned and you use some of the components from the framework as well, not just for the compliance, for security. The last part is government. Even if we have the amazing product, amazing architecture and design, we need to make sure we have governments. We're doing third-party compliance. We have the correct playbooks. We have the correct processes. Processes are so important. We cannot just come up with stuff and go anywhere we want. We want to write stuff down. We want to have playbooks for our SOC. We want to have playbooks for incident response. We definitely want to have different policies for people as well. When new people join, they will know what they to do and be able to hit the ground up and running. So thank you very much. I'm going to leave you with hands with other people. It's going to go more in depth of many of the topics today.
Alrighty, excellent. Thank you so much, Evgeny. I loved that opening keynote, and I think it really did set the stage for the topic at hand: securing your borders, evolving each layer of your security program. And I swear I did not know we were both going to talk about Swiss cheese. So thank you for doing that. If you are out in the audience there, you are going to be seeing a poll up on your screen. And this is just a quick poll to get a sense of where you're all at. So we're asking, what is your company's time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions? So is this right away, something fairly urgent for you in the next 6 months? Is this something you're looking at on kind of a 6 to 12 month timeline? Is this more of a 1 to 2 year project? Or perhaps you're not sure. You're here today to gather some information, get a sense of what solutions are out there and what you might want to implement. And once you've got a little bit more knowledge and some more options at hand, then you're going to go make some decisions from there. So perhaps you're just not sure. And again, I'm going to leave that up for just a second more, and then we're going to get our first speaker on here with us. And again, big reminder that each session we do have a live Q&A session with the speaker. We also have a $50 gift card from Amazon up for grabs for the best questions. So if you are a curious type like myself, this is one of the few times in life that curiosity may reward you fiscally and obviously. So I am a big fan of this, and I hope that your questions coming in are great questions. Excited to see them. And so with that, I'm going to pull down this poll and get our first team on out here with us. We have got the incredible team from TierPoint back in the house, and this is going to be Ed Mahoney. He's the Director of Security Product Management over at TierPoint. And we have also got his colleague, the incredible Amy Fultenberg, who's the Senior Product Marketing Manager at TierPoint, here to pose him some questions in a Q&A style presentation. And then I'm going to join in and also ask some of your questions that you've put in from the questions portal there. So with that, Ed, Amy, the floor is all yours. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Fultenberg, and I'm thrilled to introduce my colleague, Ed Mahoney. In today's session, we will be exploring how to better protect your organization by evolving each layer of your security approach. As cyber threats continue to grow in both scale and sophistication, it's essential to adapt our defenses to safeguard every part of your digital environment. So over the next 20 minutes, we'll be diving into the latest strategies to strengthen these defenses. So with that, Ed, let's get started.
Thank you, Amy. I'm the TierPoint Product Director for Managed Security. Most of my career has been in security services. I've written a couple of tech thrillers on cyber war that you can find on Amazon Books. And I wrote the first book, Cyber War 1, in 2016 as a primer on cybersecurity. So I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Great. And before Ed and I dig deep into the intricacies of protecting your organization's digital borders, A quick word about TierPoint. We're a leader in cloud, data center, and managed services with 40 data centers across the US. Our expertise lies in creating IT solutions, including cybersecurity, that align with business goals through a cloud and tech agnostic approach. With a dedicated team of over 800 IT professionals, we excel in hybrid cloud and IT. Our comprehensive services include managed public, multi-tenant and private cloud, co-location, disaster recovery, and managed security, all supported by our expert consulting team. So, Ed, let's kick things off by discussing what the evolving landscape of cyber threats looks like today. My first question for you is this: how can organizations effectively secure their borders against the evolving threat landscape?
That's a great place to start. As we look to secure our borders across various layers, perimeter, endpoint, core assets, cloud security, it's crucial to understand the evolving ransomware threat landscape since it's so pervasive now. Also, people might use the term perimeter, but it's the same metaphor as borders. We used to think of protecting the perimeter with a firewall, but there's a general recognition that the digital perimeter has shifted from the network to data, and the frontier includes the user. This is why we see an emphasis on zero trust networking, trust no one. And ransomware illustrates why this is true. It's the most insidious malware because of its complete disregard for the human condition. Hospitals and healthcare providers are favorite targets. The current cost of ransomware, both payments and protection, is in the tens of billions, trending to the hundreds of billions by the end of this decade. I see a broader term used now to capture these types of attacks: cyber extortion, where ransomware is a specific type of cyber extortion. Ransomware is an attack against the availability of our data. Just like DDoS is an attack against system availability. Exposure is trending because many enterprises have a good recovery plan in place and they don't pay the ransom. So now threat actors also exfiltrate the data and threaten to make it public. Then there's modification, so the integrity of the data is at risk. Those three types of cyber extortion fully attack the CIA triad, right? Exposure threatens confidentiality, modification attacks integrity, and encrypting the data threatens availability. There's a fourth aspect termed faux or false, where either by design or just bad programming, the attack deletes the data, which is another type of attack against availability. Then the frequency in attacks is trending toward massive growth. I think the increasing frequency is dramatic enough that it's as relevant as the other attack trends.
Wow. Considering the surge in ransomware attacks, what key elements form a holistic strategy for businesses to continuously enhance cyber resilience?
Yeah, I like how you worded that: holistic and continuous. That a comprehensive plan and encompassing the protection, response, and recovery phases is essential. Then immediate containment of ransomware is crucial to prevent further propagation and data exfiltration. Response involves evaluating affected systems, potential payment options, and then initiating recovery plans. With the attack contained, you'll begin your investigation. You'll follow guidelines there, if not actual laws specific to your industry. An interesting step is negotiation. Some ransomware threat actors operate a support desk to help you understand how to use their decryption tools or to use Bitcoin. It's not uncommon for them to negotiate a lower ransom, which leads to the payment aspect. Law enforcement will advise you to not pay, and the numbers support that response because most ransomware attacks result in the loss of some data. And of course, paying promotes continued attacks, right? So you should be prepared, though, to be able to pay. Recovery is your ultimate goal. You'll either recover from your backup or you'll recover using tools, sometimes called decryptors. And then you said continuous. The Colonial Pipeline attack a few years ago is a good example of your response just never ending. Colonial paid the ransom and used the decryptor tools from the attacker to recover their data. But sometime well after that, the FBI recovered a good portion of the ransom. Cryptocurrency is certainly partly responsible for the rise in ransomware attacks, but it's not infallible. The last steps are your preventative measures. Because cyber extortion might expose or modify or delete your data, cover the fundamentals, have a plan, and know that you can recover. Then get in front of it with defense in depth, from anti-malware protection to XDR to proactive threat hunting.
Thanks, Ed. Wow. So, can you explain the typical stages of ransomware attacks and the tactics used by these cyber criminals in each of those phases?
Yeah, just the fact that there are phases speaks to the evolution of ransomware. There are specialized skills now for each phase of the attack, oftentimes by completely different organizations. The tactics of ransomware threat actors mirror what's known as the 7-step cyber kill chain: reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, etc. Ransomware attacks start with delivery or entry, and that's most typically via phishing, or at least email. Over 90% of all breaches can be traced to email as being the initial attack vector. We say kill chain because each phase of each phase is an opportunity, rather, to kill the progress of an attack. A good email security and employee training program can thwart the entry phase. The next step is to expand. This phase is, stealthy persistence and expansion. There's an appraisal phase. Threat actors that have to understand the value of your data, so it might sell that access to yet another threat actor. Another step is all serial, but priming is preparing your network. If they're victimized, that they disable antivirus software and disable logging. Next, the attacker gains leverage by encrypting your data and perhaps exfiltrating it, which leads to the extortion phase. Again, this can be yet another threat actor. I wasn't joking earlier when I said this phase might involve a help desk to assist you in paying your ransom and recovering your data.
Wow, that's great information. So, Ed, given that 75% of organizations faced ransomware attacks in last year, what key factors are driving the evolving threat landscape, and how can organizations best protect themselves?
Right. I shared the origin story of the first ransomware attack. Early ransomware relied on symmetrical keys and often attached those keys to the malware itself. That's evolved to asymmetric encryption, making it much less likely you'll be able to decrypt your data without paying. The advent of cryptocurrency has enabled threat actors to get paid. Crypto can be traced, but it can take a long time, and many threat actors operate in foreign countries without extradition laws. Another technology advancement, a little older, is onion routing. You can download a Tor browser where Tor, Tor, stands for the onion router. Tor will encrypt the source and destination of your data packets and only decrypt what's needed at each router so that logs won't expose the entire journey, protecting the source. By 2018, you began to see the cybercrime industry itself mature and begin to provide ransomware as a service. Exposure extortion is now prevalent. I talked about how insidious ransomware is. In 2017, a school district in Iowa had threatening notes emailed to the parents of students, threatening to kill the students. And they did release personal details of the children as part of carrying out that threat. The kids are all right, but by the way. So today, cybercrime is as sophisticated as any legal enterprise with ransomware as a service. But with that specialization, security analysts can track and publish attackers' tactics and techniques, allowing them to respond with measures to contain and kill the attack.
Wow, thanks for that insight. So, Ed, 2/3 of data breaches go unnoticed internally, often discovered by external partners or the supply chain. What challenges do organizations encounter internally to detect these ransomware attacks?
Sure. I'll explain what a supply chain attack is. You have business partners, and today those partners are likely somehow integrated into your data network so that if they're compromised, it leads to your network being compromised. And I work for a managed services provider. Inherently, an MSP possesses privileged access. For that reason, compliance frameworks contain guidelines specifically designed to help you evaluate and monitor MSPs or business partners, which you can use for any business partner. Those are good computing policies to follow. specific detection capabilities, um, knowing that nothing is foolproof. For me, top of mind is multi-factor authentication. MFA, it's not infallible either, but it's normally pretty effective at controlling access. You can't monitor your business partner's systems, but you can control access. I think multi-factor authentication is one of the most proactive measures you can take. The other is XDR, extended detection and response, because that monitors and correlates security events across your enterprise, and its focus is on detection and response, including auto remediation.
Great. So, Ed, can you explain how ransomware infiltrates systems, focusing on the human element and the role of phishing in these attacks?
Right. I mentioned phishing earlier. I love how these attacks are portrayed in the movies where a hacker starts typing on the keyboard and within seconds they've gained access. It can take weeks and months because threat actors start with an email campaign and have to wait for an employee with sufficient admin privileges to click on a malicious link. I said email accounts for over 90% of the initial attack vectors of all breaches. That statistic comes from Mimecast, a leading email security vendor. So email security is good, and employee training, regular annual employee training addresses the human element. Phishing emails used to contain more typos than correctly spelled words. Now they're very well-crafted emails expressing this sense of urgency for you to respond to your company's CEO or HR or procurement team. Education and email security address the human element.
Wow, that's great information. So now let's explore NIST and zero trust architecture. Both are vital for strengthening cybersecurity against ransomware. But how do they work and what are their principles?
Well, what's wonderful about NIST is that their guidelines and checklists are freely available. Any organization can build a cybersecurity program by following NIST guidelines. There are many other frameworks like NIST. Follow the framework that's optimal for your industry, but know that NIST can serve as the basis for your plans and even procedures. Zero trust architecture, it's a framework of sorts too. It's a set of security design principles that describe best practices, much of which are focused on user access and data and application controls. Zero trust, it recognizes that with business partners supporting your supply chain or with your IT being outsourced to an MSP, your physical and network perimeter are largely exposed. Add controls around user and data and application access. There isn't one perfect zero trust security tool, but there are best practices around establishing user access rights and policies, so that you can discover breaches as quickly as possible so that you can insert responses into the kill chain.
Wow, that's very helpful. Thank you. So, Ed, I know consultative services and workshops are offered to assist customers in adopting those principles. Where do most customers typically begin?
That's correct. Most of my expertise lies in managed services, managed security services, but I would tell you that it's beneficial to leverage expert consultants to help establish both your long-term strategy and to implement tactical plans while your staff is focused on their core activities. Specific to dealing with ransomware, I'd start with an assessment to gain a sense of your security posture. How mature are you? Where are your gaps? Then I think the other key practice is establishing a strategy and leverage resources on a project basis to implement that strategy, staff augmentation, if you will. So use consulting up front for an assessment and to formulate strategy and staff augmentation if needed.
Great, thank you. And what ransomware services does SharePoint offer? And can you highlight some specific strategies for strengthening cyber resilience?
Um, yeah, yeah, I just spoke to ProServe capabilities, and I would consider starting there if you don't already have a strategy. I won't rank these in terms of importance or value because that's going to be based on your unique assessment and security posture. Email security protects against phishing, and as I said earlier, email is a top attack vector. We resell Mimecast. What I like about their product is that they have such a complete portfolio of protections where you just buy what you need. You don't have to buy Microsoft Office when all you need is Excel. Office 365, by the way, also includes a good deal of email security. Managed and virtual, but the focus right now for many enterprises is to implement an end-to-end endpoint security solution. Managed XDR offers detection and response across multiple types of endpoints. It contains a SIM to correlate events across your enterprise, so it's holistic. It includes SOAR capabilities to automate notifications and orchestrate responses. XDR also helps to consolidate vendor point solutions, which simplifies security management. Complexity is not a friend of security. We offer more than that, of course, managed firewalls, managed DDoS, vulnerability scanning, but I'd highlight email security and XDR as perhaps our products most focused on detecting and responding to ransomware. And then our Clean IP multi-factor authentication is providing prevention of ransomware. And to be fair, there are good security features built into non-security products. Look for immutability as part of your data storage and data backup solutions.
Thank you. So before we close here, Ed, for our audience to move forward, what's the single most critical step organizations can take to bolster their data protection?
Well, and I hope I've emphasized this sufficiently already, but you start with a strategy and a plan. If you can do that in-house, good for you. Engaging skilled consultants, though, can help you if you don't have that. Then begin to address your gaps. An initial assessment identifies those gaps for you, and then you exercise your roadmap. Data recovery is considered a fundamental starting point, but as I've shared with you, data exposure and modification can add problems. So to the degree that you begin applying resources toward preventative measures, email security, XDR, and multi-factor authentication. As you mature, follow a well-known framework like NIST and implement those zero trust principles. And really follow all best practices. You might think of cybersecurity as its own discipline, and there are very specific, security skills and teams. But security is following the best practices of all of your IT disciplines. So focus both broad and deep, prioritize your budget, and focus on the gaps you identified through assessments. I wish I could tell you that it's easy. Ransomware is so dynamic. Artificial intelligence will help, but it's going to help both sides. So maintain awareness, but plan.
Great. Thanks so much, Ed. And with that, I'm going to bring it to a close. Thank you all for your time today and for listening in. Please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is available here. And for more details on our ransomware prevention strategies, we have a fact sheet posted in the webinar portal. Thank you again and have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was great. I'm excited to pick your brain here in a second, Ed. But before we dive into the Q&A, I've got a poll up here asking what additional information you would like about the tier point solution. So if you are out there in the audience and you're thinking, I want a data sheet, white paper, maybe some pricing details, a personal demo, think of this as your wish list, your easy button. You're able to get exactly what you're looking for after today's summit. Delivered to you nicely and in a timely fashion as well. And with that, we do have quite a lot of questions, so why don't we just dive right into it? Ed, are you ready to rock here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Good.
Okay, first question I'm going to go with here is, can you speak more to threat hunting? I see it being offered more and more. What makes it proactive?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. And it's just it's top of mind for everybody right now. It's becoming more and more pervasive. I see it offered as usually an add-on to either XDR or managed SIM services. So part of that, it's an extension of managed detection and response. So first, just understand that with the explosion in data, exponentially increasing vulnerabilities and exploits, the rate of automation is accelerating too. And for threat defenders, the blue team, that automation is termed SOAR for security orchestration, automation and response. That's programmed logic, consisting of signatures, behavioral analysis, machine learning, workflow automation, the essential routines designed to detect indicators of attack. Threat hunting is the human element that attempts to discover threats that evade those automated detection and response systems. And they do that by analyzing your existing log events and then any other threat intelligence they have access to that might exist outside the scope of your detection and response platform. And that allows them to take response action somewhere in that kill chain before an indicator of attack becomes an indicator of a breach. And that's proactive.
Awesome. Thank you. Great answer to that and very concise. So appreciate it. I've got quite a few other questions, so I'm just going to kind of rapid fire here. Next one is from Dr. Compton here. Where does zero trust architecture fit in with defense in depth?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question because it hits multiple layers. And at the start of this, the keynote, it showed a lot of the different layers. There's maybe as many as 8 layers, depending on how you define them. I kind of merge perimeter and network, because IPS is done on a firewall and stuff now. And I hate any list that has more than 3 items in it, right? It's just hard. But I think what you see with the zero trust is it's taking that endpoint layer, the data layer, the application layer, I suppose the network layer, and then the user layer. I call it user, the identity and access management layer, and merges it all in one with best practices. So you've got good consolidation of a lot of different layers that need to be protected, defense in depth, and you apply your best practices and your tools to put some controls on that, least privileged access, et cetera.
That's great. And kind of laddering from that, I've got a question here from Jessica asking, how does an organization determine how much security is overkill? Or on the other hand, how do you know if your current protection is inadequate, aside from waiting for an attack to tell you it was insufficient? So I guess in terms of proactivity, how can you test this? How do you know?
Yeah, I felt like it was 2 questions really. It's overkill if you exceeded your budget, right? But otherwise, you can't have too much. You either exceed your budget or users are complaining of it's too hard to access anything. But the second part of that, I lost my train of thought there. You might have compliance regulations that audit you. That's helpful. But if you don't, you need to do self-assessments. You could hire a consultant for that or do it yourself. That's where NIST, things like that help you to do self-assessments. You have to do some checks on the human element. You can check your training, right, by having send a phishing campaign out to your own employees, stuff like that. So you can test yourself, but it helps if you did an assessment ahead of time and you know where your gaps are, and then you can focus testing those gaps.
That's great. And I guess similar question, you almost answered it already, is with that phishing campaign. But one question here was, how do you know if, I lost it. Here we go. How do you measure that employees have been adequately trained on cybersecurity threats?
Well, you have to have a training program. That they're not going to be trained if you don't have one. And then if you have one, it becomes a kind of a self-actualization thing. It's going to test them maybe by coming up with a phishing campaign, and it'll give you results. There are a lot of tools that do that. You can hire a team to do it for you. There's products out there that you can buy, but it'll give you the results and let you know if you're above average, below average. They usually doesn't target individuals or anything. You don't go after people telling them they're stupid for clicking on something, but it gives you a sense of the numbers. What percentage of your employee base is susceptible to phishing emails?
All right, that's great. Yeah, we've got to give out the gold stars, carrots and not the stick. Awesome. I think we're pushing up here against time. So as far as follow-ups, if anyone's looking to take some next steps, get a little more involved with Tier Point, where should they go? What should they do? Or alternatively, or additionally, anything you want to leave the audience with is kind of a nugget of wisdom here today.
Oh, listen to all this. I'm going to stay on and listen to this. It's so good that the layered defense defense in depth, we used to call it, but they're defense layers, and you just cannot be too educated. So I would just follow this whole presentation today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ed. Really appreciate it. It's been great to hear from you, been able to pose you these questions, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right. If your question was not read out or not answered today, do not fret. Everything will be passed on to the teams as well. So if you had a specific question about to your point, about how it could work for your organization, they'll follow up with you and make sure you get the information that you need. We do also have a prize to give away. So this first prize here is a $300 Amazon gift card. And quick reminder, you do need to be live and present here at the webinar to win. And with that, the first gift card is going out to Il Hyung Cho from California. Big congrats, and we'll be reaching out after today's summit to let you know how you're able to claim that prize. And with that, let's keep the good times going here. Obviously, Ed mentioned that, all these presentations are going to be great. You can never be educated enough, and that's why you're all here today. So gold star for being here in the first place. And with that, I am excited to bring out Anthony Dutra, who is here from Zerto, which is an HPE or Hewlett Packard enterprise company. Anthony is the technical marketing engineer over at Zerto, and I'm excited. Actually, I think Anthony was one of the first people I interviewed on a webinar, so I'm excited to do Q&A with Anthony once again today. So quick reminder to keep those questions coming in as he presents, and I'll be posing as many as I can to him after we hear his message and his information. So with that, Anthony, kick it off and take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Dutra, and thank you for coming to this presentation today on fortifying your data defenses, layering in rapid recovery with Zerto. I could not be more excited to dive into discussing how Zerto can help layer in and protect your borders of your IT environment. And we're going to dive into a lot here about how Zerto is unique and sort of the problems that we're seeing today and why it's so important. So the first thing to dive into, as always, is to understand that no industry is safe from today's modern cyber attack threats. It isn't a day that I go by where I don't read something, whether it's in a local state government that's been attacked, a healthcare environment, a large organization. Ransomware is becoming ever more prevalent. And now, with AI being just the way it is and so easily accessible, we're seeing that growth even happen further because it's just becoming so easy to sort of create these phishing emails or get ransomware within your systems today. So that threat is evolving. We see the 61% of disasters last year triggered by ransomware attack. Most people pay the ransom in order to get their data back, but only 4% who do get their data back. And if you are sort of already prepared for, with a backup or something from a ransomware attack, it takes quite a long time to recover from it. So not only are you forced to kind of stay within compliance to be sure that you can mitigate and sort of be preventative to this ransomware dilemma, but now you have to be prepared for the ransomware itself, be able to recover from it, and make sure that you're staying within compliance in doing so. And it's not easy to do it, right? Ransomware or malware, viruses, those sort of malicious actors looking to infiltrate, encrypt your systems aren't doing it in this sort of brute force, hey, we're in, we're destroying everything, and we're out. There are a lot of layers of complexity to figuring out or even having to protect your IT environment from potential threats. So you could just see just a couple listed on here, right? They're unpredictable in how often or how they are attacking. When they do attack, it typically tends to be within multiple layers of your IT infrastructure and what it impacts during that initial takeover does can radiate throughout all the points in your environment, and together all of this makes it very difficult to recover from. So it's you're unsure of what is clean within this point in time compared to this point in time, and how do we actually recover with as minimal data loss and downtime as we possibly can. And really, this is where Zerto, for years on years, has become that layered approach to rapid recovery, not just for ransomware attacks themselves, but all sorts of unplanned disruptions. So, what is Zerto? For those who are unfamiliar with it on the phone today, it has been a leader in disaster recovery since 2011. Basically, what we do is operate at the hypervisor layer, and we're able to basically group together your virtual machines in virtual protection groups and replicate them to either locally, another site, in the public cloud, and basically create an operationally effective point in time, almost like DVR like rollback feature, where you click the failover button and Zerto will spin up those virtual instances in those other environments at that very specific point in time that you selected. And all of this is automated and orchestrated from the failover, failback perspective, as well as even testing the solution, which is done non-disruptively, and doesn't impact production as you're doing so. So we've been a leader in this space for quite some time, and Zerto's continuous data protection today, again, being able to be used across all these different broad platforms, is what really allows for that continuous availability from edge to cloud. So again, we talked about ransomware in the beginning there. So ransomware resilience in itself, I'll go into how we detect sort of encryption within the VMs themselves, and then our broader cyber recovery story itself. But Zerto's continuous data protection has been used for unplanned disruptions, like disaster recovery in the event of a hurricane, as we've seen in Florida most recently, and the sort of multi-cloud mobility in terms of migrations, right? We're able to replicate things very, very granularly and very, very fluidly. So why not be able to use that as a migration tool to these other, uh, you know, sort of infrastructure providers, and be able to move your virtualized instances quite simply between all these many different platforms. And again, this is wrapped in a layer of automation orchestration where you are very hands off in much of the hard work that goes into having to move things, shut things down, and bring things back online, because Zerto does the majority of that for you today. So, what makes Zerto unique? It's all about our layers of protection within our software itself. The technologies that ensure that continuous data protection is core to what Zerto is. So, wrapped all in analytics, we are able to use our software only hypervisor based replication to move your virtual machines, not only on premise to the public cloud or between multiple sites non disruptively, but then again, provide that deeper layer of continuous data protection with the fact that it is this always on sort of replication. I'll dive into what the journal is within the next slide themselves, how we group your virtual machines in order to bring everything back online at the same time with application consistency grouping. And then, of course, in the most recent release of Zerto, and the encryption detection that we have built into our DR solution as well. So let's talk about that first layer of protection, and basically what Zerto is known for is that CDP. Basically, what we do is we're not using snapshots. This is not doing a backup of your virtual machines itself. We are basically taking whatever you tell Zerto to protect in a virtual protection group. Again, describe that a little bit later. And we are replicating it to another site in an encrypted line. And you now have a replica that you can roll back, 10 seconds, 2 minutes, to using our Zerto journal. So what this provides at a much higher level is the fact of a lower recovery point objective, or RPO, because you're able to seamlessly, using our proprietary software at the hypervisor layer, that ability to create a replica of the virtual machines you're protecting, and then just use our journal to roll back to the point in time that you need. It's much more operationally efficient because, again, we're not using snapshots or doing backups to freeze blocks, stop production to do anything. We're basically just making replicas and tracking the changes that are going on within inside of them. This is because of our journal, right? This is that DVR like rollback that I keep talking about. It's layers of checkpoint. So what that means is once that initial sync happens and you have replicas waiting to be spun up at the secondary site, again, it's important to know that Zerto does not um, spin up anything. It is only used for when you are it's only used for it only comes online. The virtual machine only come online when you hit that button, and it can come online literally when if a disaster happens at 10 o'clock in 3 seconds, you can recover to a point that's 10 minutes before actually not 10 minutes but seconds before that actually point happened at 10 o'clock itself. So what this does is Zerto is automatically rebuilding this virtual infrastructure, assembling the data that it needs, and recovers the application within seconds rather than having to go back to maybe a copy that is hours old or days old. And again, this is all because of our Zerto journal. Next is our layer of detection. So this was added in our recent Zerto 10 release. And basically what this allows Zerto to do is while it is taking the IO from your protected virtual machines, it is checking before it encrypts it itself through the wire that there is no anomalous encryption rate happening within the right IO inside of those virtual machines itself. So what this allow you to do in line, you're able to detect whether encryption is happening, and then Zerto tags a specific point in time within that checkpoint in order to say, hey, this immediately looks funky. When you are rolling back, do not roll back to this point in time, roll back to this checkpoint in time. So again, another layer of protection through detection with that inline encryption. Virtual protection groups, right? If we're really talking about layering our virtual machines and making sure that they're protected all together and come back online at an operationally efficient time, this is exactly what we're doing when we protect VMs and VPGs with Zerto. We're saying, hey, all these VMs need to come not only be protected together, but when you are writing those replica delta changes, right order fidelity across to the replica itself. Everything needs to be at that exact same point in time for when we're protecting this. So again, what this allows for is a much more consistent way to bring up applications because they're not all just one virtualized instance, I would hope. And again, it just allows you to be much more dynamic and provide layers of recoverability in protecting these virtual instances themselves. And of course, you're able to do so to multiple sites as well. And that's really what also that's really what makes Zerto unique too, is the fact that you can perform these fan out architectures with one-to-many replication. So one virtual machine can belong to 3 virtual protection groups, and those virtual protection groups can protect the VM, whether it's locally on premise or to a remote site. That could be another hypervisor virtualized environment server on premise, or it could be the cloud itself. Public cloud, such as AWS or Azure natively, and you can get Zerto within their marketplaces today as well. So again, layers of recoverability, this sort of fan out architecture, I can replicate and recover these many, the same VM at these many different layers in these different locations. And lastly, a layer of analysis. So Zerto also comes with Zerto Analytics, which provides an in-depth summary of your complete DR deployment and solution. It provides you data-driven predictive insights into all of the infrastructure needs and kind of what is going on within that DR environment. And it also will provide you with some DR-ready reports in order to keep you compliant with GDPR, ISO, SOX, whatever you need to show that you are protected. The last layer of defense, and if you're looking for something that is immutable, air gapped, has all flash for you to replicate to and come back online with, I highly suggest you look up the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. This is a prepackaged all-in-one solution with HPE hardware and layer of Zerto software built on top of it for you to replicate to. And then we'll take immutable copies of those of your full infrastructure, virtualized infrastructure environment, put it in our vault, and make sure it's nice and secure for you to, in case you have to break the glass and recover from an environment that is completely free of potential ransomware. A customer that actually does use the vault overall is a leading bank here in the US. They used to use legacy backups in order to recover with the vault. Well, after now deploying the vault within their environment, they took their data loss from days and weeks to hours um, of recoverability. And don't just take my word for it, right? There are a lot of many different organizations you see on screen here that not just the vault, but use Zerto to recover as quickly as possible. I mean, you could just kind of read off some of the impressive statistics on the screen there. But you're seeing thousands of virtual machines being able to recover. Like you see 8-second RPO. That means they can literally roll back 8 seconds those complete virtual instances and bring them back online at that point in time. The speed, the performance, and its battle-tested, really proven use case since 2011 is what makes Zerto unique for a lot of data protection. All right. If you want to get some more Zerto, I would highly suggest you go to any of these resources here. myzerto.com really gets you into the full swing of what Zerto is. There's our free hands-on labs, which gets you using Zerto at no cost to you. And feel free to learn more about the Cyber Resilience Vault by scanning the QR code there. I have been Anthony Dutra, and I thank you very, very much for taking the time to come to my presentation, and I hope to take questions from the audience.
All right, Anthony, absolutely. We've got a bunch of questions that have been flooding in, and so we're going to try and address as many of those as possible. I do, again, have a poll up for all of you out there in the audience listening in today. And again, this is just asking what additional information that you might like about Zerto. Again, this is your easy button, the best way to get exactly what you're looking for. So data sheets, white papers, case studies, and so on. I also want to remind you all, if you haven't taken a minute to peek into the Handouts tab yet, which is nestled in the same window as the Questions tab, we've got handouts from all of our teams that have been speaking. So previously we had the one from TierPoint, which is a two-page solution brief, be proactive with IT security. And there's also a PDF in there outlining the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, where you're going to learn how to unlock rapid air-gapped recovery. So definitely check those out, and I'd suggest checking out all the handouts today. And with that, Anthony, are you ready to rock here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent. So let's start with this. First question I've got on the docket is, how do you compare to other native services when migrating and replicating in or between cloud providers?
Right. So I think a lot of what I spoke about with Zerto are the way we, use virtual protection groups to group the virtual instances together, the encryption detection, our journal-based sort of recovery. We provide a much more granular point in time and really non-disruptive process to whether it's migrating or failing over. And it's because of everything that I really talked about, the automation and orchestration, the way we journal, the VMs we protect is really what makes it different and unique.
Okay, excellent. Next question I've got for you is, does Zerto need a lengthy conversion period to change the VMs to a different platform? For example, VMware to AWS?
Oh, yeah. No. So it's actually just takes however long or really however big the instances you're protecting are. Things provision natively in AWS and Azure within minutes, and it's whatever you've set up in Zerto for it to provide. So again, automated for you, nothing that you'll have to do necessarily after you've done the move with Zerto to make sure that everything's fine. It's all pretty automated for you.
Nice. I feel like every time I speak with you guys at Zerto, there's a certain sense of ease and simplicity that you guys have built into this.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Next question I've got for you here is, how is the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault different than having just immutable backup copies?
Yeah, and I think the main differentiator there is Zerto on the front end. So when you're replicating into the sort of landing zone portion of the vault itself, that's with Zerto. For the majority of your disaster recovery or cyber recovery operations, you'll be leveraging Zerto from that point of view. Now, if it does come time to break the glass and you are going into the vault to spin everything back up, recovery back to production again is going to happen with Zerto. So once you bring everything back up from that vault, again, you're still experiencing the recovery process from the Zerto perspective for that same ease of use and fastness for recovery. So that's really what makes us different.
Nice. No, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I have a question here. Jareem is asking, as a medium-sized business, we have limited IT resources. How does your approach to SIEM reduce our management overhead while maximizing security?
Yeah, so basically Zerto can be integrated with other SIEM tools. So probably one example that we've been playing with internally is like Aruba Central sees something funky, and what we did was create like a little Python script to send that event to Zerto and tag a checkpoint when something happens. So Zerto is really your recovery tool that interoperates with the rest of your SIEM tools, and we provide sort of that ability to interact with them for you.
Okay, awesome. Another question about compatibility. Someone's asking here about, they are already in the process of moving from VMware to Nutanix. Can they also use Zerto with Nutanix?
My heart, no, not yet. Zerto does not, or there isn't anything on the roadmap to interoperate with Acropolis Hypervisor at this time.
Okay, but there you go. So Jeff, not yet.
Not yet. But look, there's a lot of interesting things. HPE is coming out with the virtualization side, is all I'll say.
Okay. I like this. We're getting a little bit of early info here,
Yes.
Perhaps a glimpse into the future. Okay, someone here is asking, is Zerto only for site to site, or can it do multi-site deployments?
Yep, definitely spoke about it during the presentation. You can do one-to-many. So if you're looking to fan out from your replicate with Zerto locally from your production site, you could then add that VM to two more other sites. So locally replicate it to a second site, could be on-premise to another VMware site, or to the public cloud. So fan out, fan in. Zerto allows that flexibility for recovery and protection.
Okay, nice. Okay, this one's coming in from Steve. Steve's asking, with two-factor authentication for clients and multi-level data authentication for internal staff, as well as strong backup tools, what additional measures such as GenAI would you recommend?
Oh man, I wish Zerto had some cool GenAI. I wish, but there really from security perspective, it's all about, Zerto is all about your protection. So, right, if you have Zerto in your environment, you're looking to get back up online as quick as possible. Zerto got your VMs covered from that point of view. Other tools out there from a detection standpoint, really just have your pick. There's like Checkpoint, there's CrowdStrike, which didn't get the best name recently, but there's a whole bunch of other things that, again, interoperate with Zerto to provide you that layer of defense in a fuller strategy.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Another question about kind of orchestration compatibility. Chetan is asking, can Zerto sit on top of array-based replication for the orchestration piece?
Okay. So Zerto operates as its own portion, so it doesn't matter what the underlying architecture is. We only see what happens at the hypervisor level, and whatever data stores and stuff you tell Zerto. So while you can still be doing like snapshots at the array-based level, that's not really going to interrupt much. Zerto doesn't see any of that on the back end, so you can continue to do whatever you want.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. You're so efficient. I love this. I think we'll get through, more questions than normal. This is awesome.
No, this is good. Yeah. I like that.
Someone's asking, I don't know if this is a touchy subject. So speaking of CrowdStrike, they said, was United Airlines able to use this, being Zerto during the CrowdStrike outage?
Ooh, interesting. Yes, there has been. I'm not going to say, I don't think United specifically, but we have had use cases where in that particular issue, people have used Zerto to roll back, fix whatever the patch issue was, and then in CrowdStrike and redeploy it there. So yes, while United, I don't think specifically, I have heard about it.
Okay, nice. I think we are pushing up against time, but let's see if I have one more question here I want to pitch you. So one is saying, how does the break glass work in an air-gapped environment with a large geographically distributed organization?
Ooh, that one's a tough one because with the vault itself, the whole idea is to be that sort of zero trust architecture. So when it comes time to break the glass, you physically got to be at that vault in order to start those operations. Again, it really doesn't matter where the other portion of the vault is geographically, as long as it's kind of all connected together. But how I answered that was, you got to be there for those recovery operations. If you have a specific global requirement that you need access from other portions, I would work with the deployment team during those operations to make those adjustments.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to sneak one last question that just came in here. As we move into security in these aspects, is there any part of this that would move an organization forward to government certificates?
Yes. So, I mean, Zerto does help, it will provide you that backup protection, whatever you need from a data protection standpoint to check those boxes. We do provide within our software as well reporting and insights and things of that nature, so you can show SOX compliance, whatever HIPAA compliance that you need. I think that's probably the best two ways that we can help you move forward there.
Okay, sweet, awesome. Well, before we wrap up here, what would be your final words of wisdom for the audience, or are there any kind of call to action you want to leave people with here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to check out our hands-on labs, zerto.com/labs. They're free for you guys to use and sign up for. Check out Zerto for yourself. Everything that I talked about, you can play and experiment with there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. A pleasure to have you back on.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers. Take care. Alrighty, everyone. Thanks for answering the poll. Thanks for all of those awesome questions. Really appreciate the interactivity. This has been a great conversation to have with Anthony, and I hope that you're able to, get value out of being able to pick the brains of these speakers, these experts here in the industry today. Now, with that, quick reminder again to check out that handouts tab if you haven't yet already, and you want to grab that handout there from Zerto. And for all of those who are feeling lucky today, this is time to give away one of our grand prizes. So I'm going to be giving away a $300 Amazon gift card as well as 3 PlayStation 5 consoles. So wishing you luck out there. Quick reminder, you do need to be live and present here on the webinar to win. And with that, let's give away some prizes. Okay, the gift card is going out to Maria Hawkins from Ohio. Congrats, Maria. And the PlayStation 5s, first is going out to Jay Howerter from Illinois. Second is going out to Lohana Sanchez from North Carolina. And the third and final PlayStation 5 is going out to Chuck Hicks from Kentucky. Huge congrats to all 4 of you. And again, we'll be reaching out after today's summit to let you know how you can collect those prizes. And with that, let's keep the good times rolling. Next in the queue, we have got the team from KnowBe4. I know that Roger A. Grimes tends to excite the crowd here, quite an entertainer, author, storyteller. So I'm excited to have Roger here on the summit today. He is the data-driven defense evangelist over at KnowBe4. And with that, I'm going to let Roger take the reins. Take it away, Roger.
showing up for my Hacking the Hacker, Assessing and Addressing Your Organization's Cyber Defense Weaknesses. And I'm hoping to show you how to do that by showing you a little bit how hackers hack and then how you can use that knowledge to help defend against them. I'm Roger Grimes. If you haven't met me before, I've been doing computer security for 34 years. I've written 13 books and over 1,200 magazine articles on computer security. There's some of my books. I'll be covering some of the stuff that I wrote in some of those books here today. It's going to be fast-filled paced. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor, which means we try to help you and your coworkers not to get phished. And that's very important because it's the #1 way that hackers and malware hack you. And we'll talk all about that today. We're going to talk about how hackers gather information on you and your organization. And really, again, kind of just show you how hackers hack, the different ways that they hack, and then how you can best defend yourself in your organization. Many times, one of the most frequent questions I get is, well, why did they hack me? And it's usually one of two reasons: that either your company was a victim of opportunity, random target. Hackers are sending out tens of millions of emails every day. They're compromising millions of websites. And on this particular day, you or somebody in your company was just unlucky enough to get tricked, social engineered, and clicking on something or to revealing some information. And that's how they hacked you. That's how most people get hacked. But it also can be because somebody, a human hacker, decided to target you. That does happen, happens more today than it used to happen, but maybe is to the tune of many tens of thousands of years. And victim of opportunity attacks are millions of times a day, far more common. But regardless of how you get hacked, whether it's a victim of opportunity random attack or a human-directed adversary, you defend against both those types of attacks the same way. In general, the hacker methodology, the hacker attack chain, the steps are, if they do all of the steps, is that they will do reconnaissance on you or your organization, trying to learn about it and looking for some type of plan of attack, and eventually decide, hey, I'm going to try to attack this company, this organization this way. They will gain initial access. We'll talk about the different methods they can use for that. And then they'll expand, explore, and exploit further and decide what they want to do next. And eventually they're going to execute their goal, whatever it was, ransomware or stealing money or something like that. And certainly not all hackers do all steps, but if they do all the steps, this is kind of the hacker methodology that they will use. And again, usually it's also one of three ways that it occurs. It can be, a lot of times it's because of automated malware that you got tricked into running a Trojan horse program, or it was a computer worm or a virus or something like that. Again, it can also be because of a human adversary, but these days, more often than not, it was the initial access, the initial compromise happened because of some malware, with an email phishing attack or something. And then that malware, we say, dials home and lets the hacker know that they've compromised this particular environment, and then the hacker comes in and takes over. That's how most hacking happens today. It's kind of a hybrid combination of both. It's very much like what I'm getting ready to show you. The typical attacker workflow is that somebody's connected to the internet. They usually get tricked into executing what we call a stager Trojan horse program that then modifies their device so it can live through a reboot. Typically then it will collect passwords that it can find on that device, and then it will contact its command and control servers over the internet. And those servers, the hackers will monitor those command and control servers and get a list of all the different things, all the different compromised victims, and the hacker can tell the malware program what to do. Typically, the malware will download other malware programs, tell it to spread in different places around the organization, steal passwords, as many passwords as they can get. The malware update itself so it stays ahead of the antivirus program so that they're not, scannable. Eventually, the hacker will log into the command and control servers, and they get a list of all the new compromised victims, usually by network name, IP address, and host name. So usually from those three pieces of information, the hacker can kind of figure out what type of company or organization that they've broken into this time. And then the hacker logs in remotely to the target and starts to, usually they upload scripts and they start doing things like eavesdropping on email, installing other malicious scripts and programs, and kind of deciding what they want to do to that particular company. Many times they're in the company for many weeks to months, called dwell time, all without being detected. The hackers come in, analyze assess the target, and then steal whatever they want, emails or data or passwords or whatever it is. And then if they're ransomware, maybe they implement some ransomware program. But that, how I described it today, this typical attacker workflow, again, is probably how 86 to 90% of all attacker malware combinations work today. It's this combination of initial access gained through some type of Trojan horse program, or maybe because the person has unpatched software and has a vulnerability they haven't patched, or it could be because the attacker knows their password. One of those three ways, the most common ways that they get in. Although by far, since the beginning of the computers, the two most likely ways that hackers and malware get in are social engineering and unpatched software. Social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all successful malicious data breaches. Unpatched software is involved in about 20 to 40%. And then there's usually a third thing. Social engineering and unpatched software have been the number one, number two ways that hackers and malware break in for the entirety of computers. The third thing kind of changes. These days, it's password attacks, where the attacker either knows your password, has socially engineered your password, or they can guess at your password. Those two or three things altogether account for 90 to 99% of all hacks. Everything else you can think of altogether only account for 1 to 9%, 1 to 10% of attacks in the average organization. It really is. If you want to stop hackers and malware, you better stop social engineering and patch your software and take care of your password issues. And we'll talk more about that at the end. But if you're going to defend yourself against hackers and malware, you need to first think like a hacker. So we're going to kind of cover it both ways and give you a couple of examples of what hackers do. But again, typically, if it's going to be this human adversary, hacker that's trying to break into you or your organization, they're going to try to gather as much information on the intended target as possible, typically using what's called open source intelligence, or OSINT. They're going to try to find out what information they can find using Google and things like that. They're going to try to enumerate, what company assets you have, what networks you're using, what types of devices, what type of operating systems, usernames, email addresses, any trusted third-party relationships, anything they can use to try to break into you, they will. And again, they many times will use what's called open source intelligence. There's hundreds of these open source intelligence tools out there anybody can download. You can even go to a GitHub website called Awesome OSINT and see them all. And I recommend that you download a few, try to see how much, and try to see if you can find out how much information about your company or organization is on the internet. Because let me tell you, there's a ton of stuff you can use, and at least you should understand what's out there on the internet about you and your organization. You shouldn't just let hackers be the only one that's trying to see what's out there. If you're lucky, sometimes you can get some of it erased. But here's an example, another awesome OSINT site called Awesome Hacker Search Engines, and it just has a list of like 100 different search engines, to download exploits, to break into people's companies, or to find people's email addresses. I use a lot of those actually when I want to contact company CEOs. Sometimes I want to write a letter and tell them, a complaint or something, and they never tell you what the CEO's email address is. So I go find it using open source intelligence tools. A really common open source intelligence tool that hackers can use to find information about your company is called ReconNG. It's, again, a free downloadable tool off of GitHub and other places. But essentially, you just literally put in the company's domain name that you want to investigate, like KnowBefore.com. And then there's all kinds of, in this case, this picture shows you 81 recon modules, reconnaissance modules. And you can look up things like email addresses, login names, passwords. That's a tool that a lot of hackers use. And again, I think everybody should run in that against their own company's domain to see what you find. Another common OSINT tool that hackers like to do is called the Harvester. And it gathers things like emails, email addresses, device names, operating systems, open ports and banners, anything that will give you a lot of information as a hacker you can use against the company. Really popular tool is Nmap, Network Mapper. It's been around for at least 2 decades. And a hacker or anybody can run this against somebody's domain, and it will tell you all the different, not only open ports that might be accessible from the internet, but more importantly, tell you the operating systems involved or the applications involved and the versions. The version numbers are very important because that will tell you whether or not the person has it patched. And let me say, in my 34 years doing security and looking at millions of devices, I've never found a fully patched anything in my life. Nmap is one of the things that tells me, that I have found unpatched stuff. There's even a lot of special hacking tools, like in this case, I'm showing you Nick2, that literally you fire that off against a website and it will tell you all the possible exploits and vulnerabilities that are in a website, tell you what type of website it is, what version it is, and tell you exactly what you can exploit. And there's hacker tools for websites and databases and email engines and so on and so on. Cisco routers, you name it, somebody's built a hacking tool that will tell you how to hack it. And here's an example of like Nick2 on the screen here that's finding a vulnerability, a PHP vulnerability in somebody's database. And it's kind of interesting. They're saying that this suggests the host is vulnerable to the XST vulnerability because of some problem that they had with configuring PHP. And again, you don't have to be a hacker genius. They're telling you exactly the problem they found, and then all you have to do is exploit that. You can even look on the internet. If somebody has something that's publicly accessible from the internet, you can rent a service, buy a service, subscribe to a service like Shodan, that literally you put in a vulnerability like, you have this particular vulnerability that you have or know about or can exploit, and Shodan will tell you all the publicly accessible sites in the world that have servers that are vulnerable to, like in this particular example, somebody was searching for a vulnerability for what's called Big IP. Big IP is a type of network equipment, what was called an open redirect on Big IP. And you can see there's some company names right there. There's IP addresses and company names. And if you're an attacker, you can start to take advantage of those vulnerabilities right away. And it used to be a free, Shodan used to be a free service. Now you got to pay a subscription fee, but it really isn't a whole lot. And again, it lets you find vulnerabilities all around. Here's another one where they're finding another common vulnerability, what's called common vulnerability exposure from 2014. So this is, that secondary example, it's a vulnerability since 2014, and there's over 100,000 people that are still exploitable using that particular vulnerability, the Heartbleed vulnerability. You would think that Heartbleed would be closed by now since it's been over 6-7 years, but nope, there's plenty of it out there that anybody, good or bad intended, can take advantage of. Hackers will also look for unprotected online portals where they can do password guessing against. A lot of times it's email portals, but it could be VPN portals. But basically, if they're going to try to guess login names and passwords, they need to find one that's unprotected, that's not protected by MFA, that they can guess against. And you can do what's called Google hacking. Like in this example, I wanted to find out if there are any websites locatable on the internet that used Active Directory Federated Services. And that's because Active Directory Federated Services oftentimes is an older product. It's usually not patched, and it's not usually well monitored. And when I did this search, you can look at the bottom of the screen, I found Tesla. So Tesla, if I was a Tesla employee and I went to log on in, Tesla requires multi-factor authentication to log into the Tesla corporate account. But I found an API, an ADFS API that was unprotected on Tesla that, if I was a hacker, I could start to take advantage of. So they call that Google hacking, where you just can go search and try to find things and unpatched software and vulnerabilities just by doing a little bit of Googling. But typically the hacker is going to try to find some exploitable, unpatched thing, like, oh, they're using, Internet Information Server, version 7, it's unpatched. Well, there's literally dozens to hundreds of websites that have exploitation databases like exploit-db. It contains over 44,500 exploits that, you can just say, oh, I need a Microsoft exploit, I need a Windows exploit, I need an Apache exploit, I need an Apple exploit. You can literally just go look in these databases, then download these vulnerabilities. Sometimes you have to compile them. Sometimes you run them in a scripting image like Python script that then attacks the thing that you've identified using those other tools I talked about the different vulnerable services. So that is a really, really common way that, you can be compromised, which is, again, someone, a hacker looking for, identifying some unpatched vulnerability or service, running tools, identifying that, downloading the exploit, and then running it against the thing. But probably the most common way is using social engineering. We talked about, remember, social engineering, unpatched software, number one. Number two way to compromise somebody. Even if you're using what's called multi-factor authentication, a lot of people get told, oh, use MFA, it stops 99% of attacks. That is not true, has never been true. But here's a really common multi-factor bypass hack that uses social engineering, and it works against probably 90-95% of all multi-factor authentication out there. But it begins with a hacker sends a phishing email to a potential victim, and that email looks like it's coming from a legitimate service, Microsoft or Google or LinkedIn or something like that. And if the user doesn't realize that the link that it contains is rogue, is bad, and they click on it, what happens is that instead of it connecting them directly to what they thought they were going to, the legitimate website, it connects them to what's called a man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website, which is a hacker website that then connects them to the victim to what they thought they were going to in the first place. But then there's this man-in-the-middle website so that everything that the victim types in, their login name, their password, an MFA code or something like that, can be taken by the hacker and used against the victim. And anything the website sends back to the victim can be captured by the hacker. If you ever successfully log onto a website, you're always going to be sent back what's called an access control token cookie, which is kind of like, hey, you've logged in, here you are, this is your identity, this is your driver's license, you can be on this website. But the hacker can get that and then use it against the person. So they'll actually capture that access control token cookie, disconnect the victim, and then log in as the victim. And I'm going to show you a video that does that right now. I forget whether it's me or Kevin Mitnick's voice in this video, but Kevin's going to show you how to do a man-in-the-middle website that bypasses multi-factor authentication. So stand by for just a second. So here we are on an inbox, a regular looking inbox, and one of those emails has a phishing email. Kevin's going to click on it. It looks like just a normal email from somebody saying, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. But this is a phishing email, and if the victim was looking at the URL, they'd see that it's LLinked.com, not LinkedIn.com. But a lot of people would miss that, think it was from LinkedIn, and then clicked on the button. When they clicked on the button, if they didn't realize it was taken to the wrong place, if you look up in the top hand side there, it's LLinked, not LinkedIn. But really what this is a man-in-the-middle website that's capturing when the victim types in their login name and password. And even LinkedIn is going to prompt the victim to input their MFA credentials after they put in their login name and password. But really what the victim is connected to is a man-in-the-middle website that is capturing all that information, the login name, the password, and the multi-factor authentication code that they type on in here. So the person gets sent the code, they type it in, they think they're putting it to the real website, but really it's a fake website that's capturing it. And if you look behind the scenes there, the hacker, using their hacking tool behind the scenes, has captured the login name and password. The victim is actually in on the real website right now. It has passed them through to the real website. But this is what the hacker captures. You can see email address, password, and what's called the access control token cookie. They could have, if they wanted to, captured that 4 or 6 digit code that they typed on in, but they really, in this particular case, don't even need it because they have the website's cookie. Every time someone logs in successfully, whether it includes MFA or not, the website will send back a cookie that basically says, hey, you've been approved, you authenticated. The hacker can capture that and then paste it into their browser. So here is an example. Kevin is going into his browser, going to the LinkedIn real website. He's not even going to try to log in as the user with their login name and password. He's simply going to inject the stolen cookie into his browser session. He's doing it right here. He's going to open up the admin console, the developer console, copy that stolen cookie into his browser, and simply refresh his browser, and he will be logged in as the victim. And there is the attacker on the real website and as the victim. And this sort of attack would work against probably 90-95% of multi-factor authentication today. So pretty wild if you've never seen that before. And what I say in general, the defense is try to avoid any MFA solution that can be easily socially engineered or man-in-the-middle around using a man-in-the-middle website. Unfortunately, probably 90-95% of MFA that people use are susceptible to that man-in-the-middle attack. what I try to tell people is that whatever MFA that you're using, you should educate your users about what the MFA does, how it works, what it can't do, what it can't protect against. And probably the most important part is the common possible attacks for that type of MFA and how to recognize them and avoid them. Like in this particular example in the past, you could just tell the end user, hey, just be aware that it's common for scammers to send you phishing emails that have fake links and you think you're going to the right place, but it isn't. So you have to pay attention and hover over the URL before you click on it and make sure you're going to the right place. That would help prevent those sort of attacks. And you should do that for whatever MFA solution you have, which is educate people, again, about the types of attacks and how to avoid them. So I've talked about how hackers hack you, the social engineering and looking for vulnerabilities that are unpatched and that sort of stuff. So how do you defend yourself? Well, here you go. And if you're falling asleep, pay attention here because this is the best advice you'll ever receive. Number one, do everything you can not to be tricked by social engineering, whatever it takes. Remember, 70 to 90% of all successful attacks involve social engineering, and anything you can do using policies and technical defenses and education to stop people from being fooled by social engineering is the best thing you can do. Also, patch your internet accessible software. 20 to 40% of all attacks involve unpatched software that the hacker then takes advantage of using some of the methods I showed you today. So make sure you patch your software, and especially anything that's on the CISA, the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA.gov. They keep something called the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. Any vulnerability on that catalog is something that real-world attackers are using against real-world companies. There's a whole bunch of patches every year. Like last year, there's over 20,000 things that had to be patched. CISA has said that less than 4% of all those patches are ever used by any real-world attacker against any real-world target. And CISA has a list. You can subscribe to it, and they'll tell you what is being attacked by real-world hackers. And if you have software or firmware that's on that list, make sure you get it patched. Also think you need to use phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication wherever you can to protect valuable data and systems. And again, if you don't know what I mean by phishable and non-phishable, it was talking about using MFA that is not susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. And a lot of people say, well, what isn't? Well, I got a list. If you go to my LinkedIn list here of known good MFA, I will tell you exactly what MFA is phishing resistant. And you should use phishing resistant MFA whenever you can to protect yourselves. You're not going to be able to use MFA everywhere. You're going to have to use passwords. And wherever you use passwords, you should use really good passwords. A really good password is a 12-character fully random password, which is unguessable, uncrackable by any known adversary we know. If you create your own password, unfortunately, you're going to have to create a 20-character or longer passphrase or something like that. I have friends that routinely break 18-character passwords all the time for a living. They're not even, they're not as powerful as a nation state. So I really recommend that you use a password manager, because password managers create really long and random passwords that are different for every website and service. So I think you should use a password manager. But even if you don't, your password should be really difficult to guess at or to crack if they've got the password hash. And 12-character fully random or a 20-character human created one. You should also teach yourself, your coworkers, and your family and friends how to spot rogue URLs. Most social engineering attacks include these rogue URLs. And so you should teach yourself. I got some links there. I got a 1-hour webinar there that you can go watch if you want to see like 55 examples of rogue URLs and how you should have known they were rogue. And also got some article and graphics that you can download to teach yourself and other people about how to recognize rogue URLs. Really, of course, you should do everything you can to prevent phishing. I have a 1-hour webinar. If you want to see me talk about everything in my head, it's got 99 slides that how you can defeat phishing. There you go. This 1-hour webinar. If you don't want to be bored with me for an hour, you can read it. I've created basically the same content, everything I can think of to stop phishing in ebook format. I think it's like 46 pages long or something like that. Choose your poison, but both of these cover every policy, technical defense, and best practice education thing that you should do to try to stop phishing, which is really important because phishing is involved in 70 to 90% of all successful attacks. And know before, we're very big believers in training and testing people to make them less likely to click on a fish, what we call fish prone. We know for sure that if you train your people, you should give everybody good cybersecurity training when they get hired, and at least once a year thereafter. Everybody should get this longer cybersecurity training, maybe, 15, 30, 45 minutes, an hour, at least once a year. And then every month thereafter, they should have shorter training, 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes of training. And you should at least monthly do simulated fishing where you test how well they understood what you trained them. And if people fail the simulated fishing, they should get more training until they stop failing your simulated fishing test so much. Our customers that do that, the average person that comes to us, the number of employees that will click on a phishing email, any phishing email, is around a third. And after you do what we talked about, which is training and simulated phishing at least once a month and this longer thing annually, all of our customers get it down to around 5% within a year. And since that's the number one way that you can be hacked, there's nothing you can do better. Thanks for putting up with me for the last 25 minutes. My name's Roger Grimes. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com, and I'll answer any emails you send my way. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And with that, thanks, and continue to fight the good fight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roger. We are at time, so Roger, sorry, we won't be sticking around to have Q&A with you today, but any questions that have come into the chat, don't worry, he can answer those on live chat, or those will get passed on as well to the Know Before team, so you'll be able to get anything you need in terms of information. That said, you can also answer this poll and let us know what additional information you might like about the Know Before solution. So again, data sheets, white papers, case studies, all that jazz, you can answer there, and they'll make sure that you get what you need after today's webinar. And there's actually a link in the handouts tab to download the Know Before white paper covering critical considerations when evaluating SAT vendors. So if you do want to check that out, as I've mentioned before, all the handouts are really great information. So you definitely want to grab those and make sure you have those to review after today's summit. And with that, it is prize time once again. I've got our third $300 Amazon gift card here up for grabs. Again, you do need to be live and present on the webinar today to win. And with that, the prize winner of this third gift card is Rudy De Silva from Georgia. So big congrats to you, Rudy. And we'll be reaching out, as always, after today's summit and letting you know how you can collect your prize. And again, thank you for all of you who are sending in questions. Do keep those coming in. We have a live Q&A, and I believe we'll have time for that with Tim Bandos, who is next up here in the queue. Super excited to hear from the crew here at Critical Start. And Tim Bandos is the field CISO over Critical Start. So Tim, I'm going to pass things over to you, and then I'm going to join you to pose some questions from the audience. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, I actually almost kind of wish my name was Tim Bandos, like a James Bondos thing. It's actually Bandos with an A, but that's totally cool. So we're going to proceed on, and we're going to learn a little bit about, let's see what we got here, securing the border, tactics to mitigate security gaps in modern threat response. So a couple of things we're going to learn about today. First, we're going to discuss the types of security gaps that leave assets unprotected and vulnerable. And then we're going to move on to tactics that you can implement to mitigate these gaps, ensuring that whether you have a SOC team or an MDR services organization, that they're all receiving the critical signals that they need. And next, we're going to explore strategies for optimizing threat detection and response, followed by some real-world use case studies that illustrate really the impact of these tactics. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with some key takeaways, and we'll open the floor to questions. All right, so here's the introduction slide, a nice little cool Giphy image video. It took me like 20 minutes to figure out how to do, but it's not bad, right? So who am I? My name is Tim Bandos. I am the field CISO here at Critical Start. Critical Start is a vendor-agnostic managed detection and response company. So whether you have CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or Microsoft, doesn't matter to us. We can take in all that telemetry and basically provide you MDR/XDR type services. But a little bit about my past. So I started off as really the director of cybersecurity at DuPont, which is a chemical manufacturing company, science company. I was there for 12 years, built out their security operations center, was responsible for the protection over 100,000 endpoints, which was an incredible opportunity for myself. And I love that job. That's really where I fell in love with cybersecurity. And then I pivoted into the cybersecurity vendor world. I moved on to Digital Guardian, which is a data loss prevention company. I was their CISO and VP of Managed Security Services, where we focused on delivering both data loss prevention and MDR services to our customers. And then for the last 2 years, I was working as the CISO and EVP of SOC services at Exidium, formerly known as Komodo Cybersecurity, if you're familiar with that particular company back in the day. All right, enough about me. I love to always start my slides off with a big scary stat. We interviewed around 1,000 CISOs outside of our, Critical Start's customer base, but we wanted to understand, what did the attack, surface look like for these CISOs? Have they been attacked over the last year or so? And we had a response of 83% of those cybersecurity professionals have experienced a cyber breach, regardless of them having traditional threat-based detect and response security measures in place. So what does that mean? So if they, had CrowdStrike deployed or any sort of endpoint protection platform deployed, they were still experiencing breaches, and that's an 83%. That's incredible if you think about it, right? So we continue to spend all this money on layering in, cybersecurity solutions, but maybe there's a lack of, people and process behind those solutions. It really kind of depends. Maybe there's an entrance vector that goes unprotected. And that's really what this presentation is going to talk about, is kind of that hidden threat, right, within the environment, within the network. So let's talk about understanding the security gaps. So let's look at addressing the invisible threat. This is a common security gap that often or even usually goes unnoticed. These particular gaps typically involve unprotected assets, which ultimately leads to incomplete telemetry and missed signals that can significantly impact your security operations. So when critical assets are being unmonitored, attackers essentially have an open door to exploit these vulnerabilities, making your SOC team or your MDR services less effective. So it's vital to identify these gaps in order to address them proactively. These are some of the invisible threats, or the common security gaps that we see, and they stem from several sources, right? Missing or outdated endpoint protection. So let's say they don't install Microsoft Defender, correctly, or SentinelOne, doesn't matter. Or maybe there's some log ingestion failures, or we have a shadow IT device that's out on the network that doesn't have the appropriate protections all in place. That contributes to an unmonitored asset. And without having complete view of your environment, once again, your SOC team, your MDR teams, they're going to miss those critical signals. They're going to miss events and alerts that are critical in identifying whether or not there's attack going on within your environment. And this is key to implement tactics that close these gaps and ensure that you have comprehensive monitoring across your IT environment, or maybe across your IT and OT environment if you're in a manufacturing type facility and you have operational technology networks as well. Not sure why my icons didn't transfer over, but that's okay. These are a couple of risks to the environment. I think the first one is really around unmanaged devices. They're often sometimes the first foothold for attackers. Attackers will often scan the network looking for these outliers, machines that have maybe lower patch levels, unusual services running on ports, or even unique pieces of software that aren't found on the rest of the network. And these outliers are typically great entry points for an attack because they tend to be more easily exploitable, right? Less likely to have those security controls in place. And if you don't have anybody managing them, you're going to miss that particular signal coming in. A second risk is around unmanaged devices. I think this, ultimately hinders incident investigations. Analysts, actually, this is a particular use case or scenario that I went through once, or I was familiar with it. An analyst in a security operations center, they needed to quickly and officially work through an alert that came in. And there was a case where this analyst received an alert, and it was to an internal IP address, and it was communicating with a known bad IP out on the internet, notably a command and control server, a C2 server, as they call it. However, their SIM or their CMDB, which is an asset inventory, it didn't have any record of what that IP was on their network, nor did the vulnerability management or endpoint protection and response consoles have a record of this particular device. And this device actually turned out to be an IP camera that had been compromised by a piece of malware because it was using default credentials. A lot of these IoT devices that come out, they come with, missing security configurations, or they weren't hardened, out of the manufacturing facility, right? They didn't have security built into them from the very beginning. A lot of times that's the problem with these IoT devices. They make it very easy to exploit. So that's always, and potentially, right, a gap within your security stack. Then accidental network bridges can ultimately bypass firewalls. I've actually seen this firsthand in a critical manufacturing line. It was actually shut down due to ransomware because what the investigation had showed that there was a rogue device that had bridged from the IT to the OT network, which enabled the attackers to bypass that firewall that had been put in place to ultimately segment those networks. A lot of times, when you're setting up network segmentation for OT, type environments, process control type, network environments, you think that firewall is enough, right, to protect. But a lot of times that, these things can be leveraged as, a jump box right into that particular environment, and then you have real problems. You start to have or see a real world Kinect effect of a breach, where maybe they open up a specific valve that releases a chemical gas, out at a particular plant site. I've seen this firsthand, and it is incredibly scary, right? When you start to kind of traverse into that real world sort of scenario. Then we also have another risk around rogue devices complicating security governance, controls. So you don't have maybe all the security controls that you need to have in place with those rogue devices. And then finally, end-of-life devices as well. They're potentially vulnerable. A lot of times manufacturers are often no longer providing functional and security fixes for these end-of-life devices or these EOL devices. And they make them much riskier and more difficult to secure if something goes wrong. So there's just a few, I would say, risks to the environment without looking at those monitored assets. So there's a quick story. I like this particular story. This is a shadow IT compromise. I actually worked this particular incident during an IR. And this happens almost every day. I see this all the time, especially when we get hired on for incident response investigations. So in this particular case, an IT administrator had spun up an RDP server, a remote desktop system that allowed them remote access into the corporate environment, but they didn't apply all the security controls to that particular device. They didn't roll out the endpoint protection platform that they use for their corporate environment. They didn't enable multi-factor authentication. This is essentially an open door for an adversary to enter into the environment. So they were able to brute force their way into this RDP server because they had a weak username and password, and they start moving laterally into the environment. Let me just click through the next here. What happened was that on day 2, after they had breached that network, they started wiping event logs. They created a new admin account, which is often leveraged for persistence purposes. And then they moved further laterally into the environment, into their VMware side of the house, started looking for files, right, and information that they could exfiltrate and steal. Then they moved laterally into the domain controller. They dumped credentials on that particular domain controller, so they had basically unfettered access to domain admin creds, and then also privileged accounts as well throughout the environment. They started accessing file servers and backup servers and SQL databases, and ultimately identified the documents that they were looking to exfiltrate. So they exfiltrated a bunch of disaster recovery docs around the policy of what that company was doing from a DR perspective, and they sent it to sensebase.com. So in this particular case, we came in and were able to prevent this particular breach. This is a ransomware case because on day 3, they would have come back and then ultimately deployed ransomware. But what a lot of times ransomware operators will do is they'll try to learn their environment. They'll try to understand, what are your policies? How can I ensure that I am going to receive funds from this particular organization if we do deploy ransomware out? They want to understand what their backup and recovery process look like. We see this case quite a bit, so it's really important to make sure that if you have these rogue assets or IT assets that are getting spun up, that they have the proper protection put in place as well. In addition to that survey that we had sent out, we also talked about visibility in the environment and how CISOs responded. So the question that we asked was, how would you rate your organization's evidence-based visibility into the cyber risk landscape, right, for asset identification and protection of risk? 34% of those respondents said that they had full visibility back in 2023, and then 29% in 2024. I think this is a really difficult question a lot of times to answer. You don't know what you don't know. There's always that unknown. There could be those rogue assets or devices that sit out there in the network. I remember doing an audit one time at a particular plant site. We had identified basically a beaconing activity from a Wi-Fi unit. And what this Wi-Fi did, we actually connected to it, and it dropped us directly on that corporate network. But this was an unauthorized Wi-Fi network, and we couldn't understand where the signal was emanating from. So I went into the plant site, and I actually went into someone's office. They had drilled essentially a Wi-Fi device underneath their desk to make it easier for them to basically move throughout the plant site. So I guess this particular site didn't have a bunch of Wi-Fi points, so he had created his own essentially, for ease of use. But unfortunately, that also caused a major risk to the environment because someone, from the road could essentially connect to this Wi-Fi unit and be directly connected to the corporate network. So that's why it's critically important to understand, basically all your assets in your environment and making sure you're doing those regular audits. In addition to what we saw too, out of that 87% number, 28% of them were associated with unmonitored and unmanaged devices. So that's a pretty high percentage. And this is why we're really talking about this today, is really the importance of endpoint coverage gaps and SIM coverage gaps and making sure that you have the appropriate coverage right across your entire landscape. So how do we go about mitigating these security gaps? There's a few things that we can do. We can ensure that we have comprehensive tooling coverage, right? We can monitor for log ingestion failures, and we can identify managed and hidden assets. I'm going to talk about each one of those in a moment here. So from a tooling coverage perspective, I don't see any of the content on the slide. I'm not sure why that didn't transfer over right. I can talk through that, no big deal. What we would do is we would perform regular audits of endpoint protection, right? Validating that all the assets from the endpoints and the network devices are in fact being protected. There's also a component of verification of SIM and MDR data ingestion. So ensuring that all your relevant data is being properly ingested and monitored. And then also ensuring that you have coverage for both IT and OT environments. You have an OT environment. So addressing both that IT, OT assets to expand obviously your attack surface. Monitoring for log ingestion failures too is critically important. We sometimes see this overlooked, not having proactive alert notifications if a particular log source actually goes down. Sometimes this could be indicative of an attack. I've seen attacks where the attacker literally went after the syslog server that was forwarding a lot of their events to their SIM, which would ultimately enable the attackers to move laterally undetected. So attackers are well aware, right, of how environments are structured and set up, and a lot of times they can target those syslog systems. So it's important to monitor anytime you have ingestion failures. And then finally, identifying and managing hidden assets. There are a variety of different approaches. In our particular approach, we would recommend maybe automated asset discovery tools, so continuously scanning your environment for any sort of new or hidden assets. Then we make recommendations around also classifying those assets as well based on criticality. It's always important to understand not only where all of your assets reside, but where are your most sensitive assets, your ones that are considered high risk. Maybe they contain sensitive information or trade secret control information, right? And you would apply risk-based controls around or additional levels of protection around those higher risk entities. And then also continuous monitoring and scanning, so ensuring that all your assets are consistently tracked and protected as well. Here's just a couple of options that can be taken to from a discovery perspective. There's something called active discovery tools that can do ping sweeps, essentially sending ping requests out to every IP address on your network to see which ones respond and then addressing them accordingly. You could also deploy agents, installing like a lightweight software agent on the devices that can report information. I do think there's a gap in that particular approach though, because you're going to miss obviously some of those devices where you're not installing them. And then also you can leverage W&I SNMP queries. You can use industry standard protocols to essentially query devices for information about themselves. So this would be like an active discovery tool type of an approach to identifying those assets. Or you could do passive discovery. You could do network traffic analysis where you're monitoring the network traffic to identify which devices and applications are communicating. You can do log analysis where, based on the logs that you're ingesting into your SIM, you can look for various network devices and systems that, have connected assets to them. And then also DNS traffic analysis. This is also important. Monitoring your DNS traffic to identify any devices that might be querying your DNS servers, right? Outbound communication network calls to the internet. Here's just a couple of examples of technologies that are available. I'm not necessarily recommending one or the other. There's a lot of great items out there. Obviously, Qualys and Landsweeper and Tenable, they've been around for quite some time now, and notable technologies to leverage. But there's also additional ones as well that I'd recommend checking out if you are looking into getting an asset visibility component to that. So how do we go about optimizing detection response now that we are taking these steps to mitigate some of these threats? We can integrate with asset visibility, right? Ensuring that you have comprehensive visibility across all your environments for better threat detection. And there's also some best practices, obviously, for continuous detection as well. At Critical Start, we are an MDR provider, a managed detection response provider. We provide this level of asset visibility as a part of our service. I'm actually not familiar with any MDR provider that does that, but it's important to, once again, identify those rogue assets and ensuring that you have that complete signal coverage. Otherwise, your MDR provider is going to miss those signals, if there's any sort of devices that aren't included or incorporated into that inventory. So those would be my recommendations around kind of optimizing your detection and response in that particular area. And then what do you gain out of that? From an asset visibility perspective, these are some of the outcomes. You're ultimately verifying your security tools are deployed properly where needed. You can prioritize endpoint coverage gaps as well by critical assets for the greatest risk reduction. And then you're ultimately monitoring your asset inventory changes over time and discovering if you have any sort of stale or orphan security agents not checking in for updates. So asset visibility, critically important. It's very important to us as well. Once again, we actually incorporate that as a part of our service. So if you have an MDR provider today, I would ask that question. What are you doing about rogue assets or shadow IT devices or devices that show up on a network that maybe aren't monitored by an endpoint protection platform? How do we identify those types of risks to my environment and see what they say? Because I think that's an important question to ask. Finally, this is just a quick use case study where we were optimizing MDR with asset visibility. We incorporated that capability into this particular customer's base. They had incomplete, I think, MDR coverage. There were some hidden assets that we had identified. So we improved our detection rates by over 30%. We identified a bunch of assets they weren't even aware of. So this is, once again, very important just to make sure that you identify those potential security gaps so that the customer can ultimately mitigate those threats. So some conclusions and key takeaways. I said this over and over again throughout this presentation. I think closing those security gaps for effective response is very, very important. We wanted to focus on comprehensive tooling, monitoring, and also asset management. We think those are absolutely essential. And then what are the next steps to take? Start implementing these practices directly, for your SOC team or for your MDR provider so that you ensure that you have the visibility needed. And then always continuously improve. Cybersecurity is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, right? You can become more mature in one particular area versus others, but it takes some time. I think it's important to have that roadmap of maturity so that you're constantly evolving, right, your profile so that you ensure adequate protection for future-based risks, right, that come about. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to open up the floor for a Q&A if there's any questions around this particular topic or any questions in general.
All right. Yeah, we actually have quite a few questions, so let's dive into those. And again, thanks for presenting. That was excellent. And let's open up with this one. The presentation mentioned the importance of automated asset discovery. For those who have implemented such tools, what unexpected benefits or challenges have you encountered?
Yeah, so the benefit, of course, is identifying the unknowns, in an environment. It's those devices that you weren't aware. Maybe it's an IoT device, like an IP camera that I mentioned earlier, or it's a device that needs to have endpoint protection installed on it. And those are the critical devices that they don't have adequate protection. So that's a massive, I think, benefit to that. The cons, not a lot of cons, from that perspective, as you identify, you're going to have a lot of potential noise where you have to weed through what is this IP address versus this IP address. It could be, once again, just a device that maybe doesn't even have network connectivity. So it's important to, filter through that so you can build an adequate asset inventory within your organization.
Okay, excellent. That's a great answer. Thank you. I'm just going to keep firing these away because we do have quite a few, and I always like to touch on as many as we can. So next one I've got is, what percentage of incident response cases have you worked where the entrance vector was associated with an unmonitored asset or log ingestion failure?
That's another great question. I would say most of our cases that we've responded to were maybe a phishing incident, right? They click on a link or an attachment, or maybe there was, a potential vulnerability that was exploited. Those are a majority. I would say around 25% of the cases, though, which is pretty significant, are associated with a device that is unmonitored. And that's very similar to what we saw, too, when we were, interviewing the CISOs as well. I think they said 28%.
Yeah. So that falls in line. Okay, next one here. In your experience, what's been the most effective method for ensuring continuous visibility across both IT and OT assets?
So continuous visibility, IT, OT assets. One, I think it's ensuring that you have either a SIM or a data collection, element where you're dumping all of those logs into that centralized repository. So gaining complete visibility across your environment from not only IT environments, but also the OT environment as well. So, that firewall that is the network segmentation between an IT and an OT environment, all that data needs to be consumed and centralized into, one location so that you have that continuous monitoring in place. And then it's setting rules, detection mechanisms, mapping your rules to the MITRE attack framework so that you have complete kind of coverage across all of those different elements, and then responding accordingly. So it's, one, ensuring you have the visibility, two, you're collecting all the right logs, and then three, that you have the appropriate, mechanisms in place for response.
Awesome. That's great. Perfect. Thank you. Man, so many questions. Okay, next one here is, how does Critical Start's MDR service identify assets with missing security tooling?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that's that's something that's already built into our product in terms of identification. So what we do is we aggregate and correlate all that information that we're consuming from your environment. So if you have, let's say, a Qualys scanner or a Tenable scanner, we're consuming all the data points that we're collecting from there. If you have Microsoft Entra ID from an authentication perspective, we're taking all of that data, and we're also taking all the telemetry from your EDR agents that are deployed. And then what we do is we dedupe that information. We identify when there's assets in the environment that don't have protection enabled and installed, so that we're not seeing basically signals from your endpoint protection provider. And that's ultimately how we do that. We provide a nice, pretty dashboard for that identification, and then we send alerts and escalate that to our customers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. No, you're the best. Okay, I'm quickly throwing up our poll
You say
here.
that to everyone, I know.
No, not everyone. I'm pretty honest.
All right, that's good. I appreciate that.
I've just thrown up a poll for the audience, so if anyone's out there and they are looking for more information about Critical Start and the solution, feel free to answer that. I think we do have time for maybe 2-3 more questions, so let's keep going on, but I want to give people time to do that. And okay, a question here. They're asking, how would you compare endpoint protection vendors? Kind of what things would you look out for?
Well, yeah, that depends on the security stack that you have deployed. If you have, for example, like Microsoft E5 license, obviously proceeding forward with Microsoft because you can leverage all the benefits of, Sentinel, Defender for server, 365, Defender for email. It's good to have. It's nice having an ecosystem of technology that all works together. So you have, maybe deeper API integrations. So for example, Critical Start, we sit on the XDR design board, the design console for Microsoft. We're heavily integrated with Microsoft. So if you have Microsoft, we have incredibly deep integrations with them for response capabilities. So resetting usernames and passwords, removing, emails out of inboxes. All of those capabilities, I think, are critically important. So the way that I look at endpoint protection, providers is, ensuring that it also works with maybe your orchestration capabilities internally. Make sure that all those integrations kind of work together and that you have that complete visibility. So that's how I would evaluate an endpoint protection solution.
I like that. And I think it kind of ties back into this layer. Like, what do all your current layers look like? What are you looking to build, and how do they actually fit together and, find the best fit?
100%. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Next question. The buzzword of the year, AI. How do you guys adapt to AI monitoring, since that could be viewed as unmanaged?
Yeah. So there's AI monitoring. So let me, I'll pose it from 2 different angles. So within our SOC team, we leverage some AI components for, faster triage and the ability to, filter through events and escalate alerts that are higher criticality. So there is a component of AI that we look for. There's also AI-based attacks. We see sophistication in, phishing attacks where they leverage AI to draft emails. No longer are we getting those misspelled, messages where it's clearly phishing, but individuals are still going to click on those links or attachments. It almost doesn't even matter. But we are seeing that sophistication, run rampant. We're also seeing AI, leveraging more living off the land utilities like PowerShell and Command Shell, and kind of automating those components in their scripts and making it easier for them to move laterally across the environment. I still think endpoint protection softwares and solutions like CrowdStrike, Sentinel, basically the major players in this space, they're going to pick up and detect on those, particular items. They might identify them as low severity or even medium severity type alerts. So it's important to partner with MDR providers that triage all alerts that come in, right? Regardless of their priority. That's something that we, pride ourselves on here too at Critical Start, is we look at every single alert that comes in, regardless of the severity level, and we adapt that to your environment. So, that's how I would, kind of position the whole AI, type matter. I think AI obviously is only going to get better, but so are the detection capabilities as well as we leverage, artificial intelligence.
That's great. And yeah, I think you covered it super well. And I'm optimistic about AI. I think, we all should be, we all work in this sector. So it's just a matter of adapting and being wise about how we use these tools. So amazing. Well, that is where I'm going to leave things with you here today. But I always like to give a last opportunity. So if there's any sort of call to action, if people are curious, want to follow up with you, or anything you just think is important, that should stick in the brains of the audience here today, I'll leave that to you to decide.
Yeah, I mean, I had, oops, sorry about that. I was trying to show my slide. If you have any of those additional questions and you want to reach out to me, my email is tim.banos@criticals.com, or feel free to LinkedIn me. I'm a pretty nice guy. I love to talk about anything cybersecurity related, or even barbecue. If you want to talk about barbecue, I love smoking meats. I'd love to, connect with you and, learn a little bit about some of your challenges and outcomes you're looking to achieve in your environment. But thank you today for everyone who listened.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And before you go, my actual final question, what is your best recipe? What meat do you smoke the best? Do you have a dish?
Brisket is my spirit animal, my friend. Yes, I'm a huge proponent of slaying the brisket. So my family is obsessed with ribs, but I love the brisket, so I'll do them both. So typically we'll throw a 200-person plus July 4th party, and I smoke everything. So, but yeah, brisket would be my choice of meat.
Okay, next time we're doing this live in person with brisket, okay?
That sounds good. Sign me up. I'm good.
Awesome. Alrighty, well, thank you so much. Take care. We'll have you back soon, I hope.
Great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.
Alrighty, everyone. If you haven't already and you do want to snag Tim's contact, grab that now. And then we are going to move into our final prize giveaway. Quick reminder that we also have the handout section there. So if you haven't already, there's a data sheet in there for Critical Start. It is about Critical Start Managed Detection and Response Services, or MDR, as we've been referencing. And again, this covers the human-driven threat detection, proactive risk mitigation, and full protection for maximum security outcomes. So again, all these resources are absolutely worth grabbing now, so I highly suggest it. But again, check it out, and let's get into some prizes. Now, I don't know if there's any Star Wars fans out there. I might be getting everyone too excited between barbecue and Star Wars, but if you are indeed a Star Wars fan, we've got the Lego Star Wars AT-AT, and we also have another $300 Amazon gift card going out. Quick reminder again, you do need to be live and present on the webinar today to win, and let's get to it. So gift card number 4 is going out to Justin Schaefer from Maryland. And hopefully you are a big Star Wars fan. This is going out to Nicholas Brizzolata from Virginia. Huge congrats to you both. And again, we still have another gift card and that iPhone 16 to give away after our final presenter comes on out here with us today. And with that, let's get our final presenter on stage with us, shall we? So we've got DNS Filter in the house. This is the team that'll be wrapping up today's excellent summit. And I am excited to hear from Mikey Pruitt, who is the partner evangelist over at DNS Filter. So again, Mikey, I'm going to kick things over to you, and then we do have a Q&A, so keep those questions rolling on in. I know it's not a grand prize, but we do have those $50 Amazon gift cards also up for grabs. But more importantly, you're able to pick Mikey's brain and get the information you're looking for. So without further ado, Mikey, take it away, and let's wrap things up here together.
Hey there, welcome everyone. Today we'll be covering DNS 101, how the domain name system fits into your security strategy. My name is Mikey Pruitt, and I'm the Global Partner Evangelist here at DNS Filter. We're going to dive into the critical role that DNS plays in cybersecurity and how DNS filtering can be a powerful, proactive tool in protecting your clients' organizations. Here's what we'll cover today. First, we'll define DNS, like what is it, and take a quick look at how it works. Then we'll explore the threats that can arise if DNS isn't protected, followed by an introduction to protective DNS, which addresses these vulnerabilities. I'll then introduce you to DNS Filter, highlighting what sets us apart, and we'll review partner perks. We'll wrap up with Q&A to address any questions, so please go ahead and put them in the chat or wherever we're putting them here in this platform. Again, a bit about myself. I was an early hire here at DNS Filter. I've been working in tech most of my life since the .com bust, so I've seen quite a few things. I started at DNS Filter as an engineer, a DevOps engineer. I was the first product manager, and now I'm in marketing. I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. So here I am, and my job is to work closely with partners to optimize DNS security within their tech stacks. Basically to talk about cool tech for a living, and today is no different, so let's jump in. I'm sure you all know what DNS is, but let's start with the basic review. Think of DNS like the Maps app on your phone. When you type in a destination like the name of your favorite taco place, the app doesn't know where Fave Taco is right away. It first translates the name into the exact address and then gives you step-by-step directions on how to get there. DNS works the same way. When you type in a website like dnsfilter.com, DNS translates that into the site's actual IP address, kind of like its street address on the internet. So just like your Maps app gets you to Taco Tuesday, DNS gets you to the website you're after. Fast and easy. No U-turns or detours, of course, unless something malicious is trying to mess with the route, but we'll get to that part later. DNS maps easily understandable domain names like dnsfilter.com to IP addresses. Every time you type a URL or click a link, DNS is working in the background to connect you to the right place. Now let's talk about the typical walkthrough of a DNS query. When you enter a domain into a query box, you travel through various DNS servers to the IP address. It starts at the DNS resolver, goes to the root server, then the top level domain servers, and finally the authoritative server. Each step is critical along this route so that you end up at the right place. So authoritative servers hold the IP address. If you've ever hosted a website, maybe some of you have, or understand how it works, and pointed an A record to the IP of your web server, that is the authoritative record. Recursive servers process the request. They send queries throughout the DNS server chain to find that IP address. DNS Filter, we are a recursive DNS resolver, which means we're the first contact when a DNS query is made. Again, I assume this is a review for most of you, but let's just think for a second about the amount of communication required for a simple DNS request. And I didn't even mention the layers of caching, encryption, something called time to live, or that this whole apparatus was designed in 1983, over 40 years ago. Your phone, your laptop, television, security cameras, basically anything connected to the internet are making thousands of DNS queries every day. So if this is the force that powers our modern world, how can it be manipulated against you? Let's get into that. And I'll start with a harrowing experience that tested an MSP's resilience and ultimately led them to DNS Filter. 210IT, they rolled out a new RMM tool across all their client systems. And one morning up, and they've told this story to me in person, and their faces and their expressions are just, gripping, and it like tugs at your heartstrings, but their phones just started ringing off the hook. I think they said they were having coffee. And basically the messages were like, every client is offline, everything is dark. What is going on? So what happened is a brute force attack on an unprotected third-party backend account for that new RMM tool was compromised. That allowed the attackers to gain admin access, and they quickly deployed ransomware from unblocked malicious domains. They did that across every endpoint, server, and workstation. The team sprang into action, worked around the clock to restore core services within about a week. Workstations took a bit longer, a few more weeks. But following that attack, 210IT knew they needed stronger defenses. They implemented DNS filtering from one of our competitors at first to block the malicious domains. But there were some problems. That competitor had some service outages, some interruptions during their kind of initial deployment phase. And their clients thought the ransomware was back and were getting a bit nervous. So 210IT ripped and replaced that solution with DNS Filter, and they haven't looked back. So remarkably, this incident strengthened their client relationships. By staying transparent and proving their resilience, they kept all of their clients and even attracted some new business. This MSP story is really proof that when put to the test with the right tools, they can protect their clients and rise above the challenge. So DNS is essential to the way we use the internet, but it's also surprisingly vulnerable. So that harrowing story is one version. But let me go over a few of these attacks. When DNS is left unprotected, it's really like an open door to allow a wide range of threats. Things like zero-day attacks, where new vulnerabilities are exploited as soon as they're discovered. There's denial of service and distributed denial of service. This is the DOS and DDoS attacks that you may hear about on the news. These flood DNS servers with requests, making services unavailable. Then there's DNS tunneling, a technique that hackers use to bypass firewalls and communicate with malicious servers. And DNS hijacking, where attackers redirect traffic to fake websites. Now, there's a few ways that DNS hijacking works, but in general terms, that's what it does. And then there's DNS spoofing, which tricks DNS servers into providing false information between each others. So each of these tactics has the potential to disrupt operations, compromise sensitive data, and expose networks to really significant security risks. If DNS isn't secured, it leaves the door open for these attackers to exploit. So to put things into perspective, 88% of organizations have experienced some form of DNS-based attack. That's a staggering number, 88%, and it highlights just how common DNS threats really are. But despite these numbers, DNS security is often overlooked. We tend to focus on other entry points like email or endpoint security. Not that those are not valuable and not wise to protect, but DNS is just as critical. It's an attack vector in its own right. And given how essential DNS is to the internet functionality, leaving it unprotected can be a serious oversight. These stats make it clear. DNS security is no longer optional, it is essential. So there is one vulnerability often used in DNS exploits, which is phishing. Phishing is one of the biggest challenges in security today. It preys on what remains the weakest link, humans, us. We are the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. And no matter how advanced our tools become, attackers know that if you can convince a user to click a link in an email or a text, they bypass most of the defenses we put in place. Attackers don't just send generic phishing emails. They target individuals. They pose as trusted contacts, like maybe your CEO or your manager. They imitate trusted vendors, like in this screenshot you'll see here. So I have been to Charlotte a lot over the last few months, moving my father-in-law closer to my wife and I. He's getting old and we needed some help, and we were happy to have him close by. But there is a toll road that shortens my trip to Charlotte by about 20 minutes and significantly more if it's rush hour. So we use the toll like almost every time. It's one of those fancy ones where it snaps a picture of your license plate and like mails you an invoice to the vehicle owner. So my wife got this text message on August 28th. From an unknown number, with a link to pay the toll, southernconnectortolls.com. It's not a terribly good phishing attempt, but, it was good enough to trick my wife because she thought this was not unusual. We paid several invoices for toll roads already. The $4.89 price was pretty much in line with the cost of the other invoices. So she clicked the link. Well, what happened? She saw the DNS filter block page because I installed our roaming client on her phone. So she holds up her phone to me, and the DNS filter block page is there, and told me what she did, and I just laughed and said, "You're welcome. That's what we do. You're welcome. Don't click stuff." But this is why it's so critical to have DNS filtering in place. While users might still click on a phishing link, DNS filtering can prevent that link from leading anywhere dangerous. You might even get a laugh out of it. So this is where protective DNS, or PDNS, steps in as a powerful line of defense. So PDNS works by scanning every DNS query, every request made to access a website or service before it reaches the user. That's a key point. It checks these queries in real time, identifying and blocking malicious sites at the DNS level. Back to our mapping app comparison, think of protective DNS as like the geographic filter, only suggesting taco places near you. But in this case, we're blocking unwanted and dangerous web content. Whether it's a phishing link, a ransomware site, or malware, PDNS stops these threats in their tracks, filtering malicious content right at the source. PDNS prevents harmful websites from loading, protecting users and devices from a wide range of cyber threats, some that we looked at. So, protective DNS isn't just about blocking threats. It's highly adaptable to your client's organization and your organization. It's flexible. There's content filtering. This allows organizations to block specific categories of websites, such as gambling, streaming, or social media. We can block things like illegal download sites that will keep your clients out of hot water with the MPAA. There's a real nasty hate category to categorize sites where criminal organizations would upload grotesque videos that honestly have no place on the internet, much less on your customer's public Wi-Fi. We always block child exploitation domains that many of our hospitality and retail customers appreciate. With these categories, you can create a customized browsing experience that aligns with your client's goals and security requirements. Some providers like DNS Filter use AI-based categorization, which is really critical as fast as things evolve these days. By leveraging artificial intelligence, protective DNS can quickly identify new threats and categorize emerging risks as soon as they appear, much faster than humans could on their own. Protective DNS integrates real-time threat intelligence, ensuring that it's always up to date with the latest security information. This combination of content filtering, AI, and real-time intelligence gives organizations a flexible, powerful tool for managing DNS security in a way that's effective, robust, and it's flexible, can meet your needs where your needs happen to be. It's a proactive approach to security that keeps threats away before reaching individual devices. Instead of relying solely on endpoint protection to catch issues after the fact, protective DNS filters and blocks these threats at the network level, stopping attacks at the earliest possible stage. Adding a critical layer of protection to enhance your security stack. So let me give you a quick intro to DNS Filter. We were founded in 2015. We had a clear mission to simplify DNS security without compromising your control over network traffic. Fast forward to today, and we're trusted by over 35,000 customers around the globe. DNS Filter processes more than 130 billion DNS queries every single day. That's a huge volume, about 1% of the world's internet traffic. 1%. We protect DNS resolution for Fortune 100 enterprises, massive retail chains, entire countries, well-known consumer routers that you've heard of that I cannot say, and a coffee shop near you, like right around the corner. We protect them too. It's just as accessible for the Fortune 100 as your neighborhood coffee shop. So what sets DNS Filter apart? One of the strongest advantages is simplicity. DNS Filter is easy to acquire, deploy, and manage. We're designed to remove the barriers to entry for DNS security. There's a myriad of ways to purchase through us directly or from one of our trusted distributors. There's a subscription plan to suit every organization. Getting DNS protection for your clients is super simple. You can deploy 1 or 1,000 endpoints in just a few minutes. Once you're active, minimal maintenance is required. You can adjust filtering policies on the fly. Software updates are automatic, and domain categorizations happen in real time. And this is the categorization part. We don't rely on outdated static lists or slow manual updates. Our system is continuously learning and adapting, which means DNS Filter can identify and block new threats fast, 10 days faster on average. So under the hood, we built in advanced threat intelligence to proactively catch threats at the DNS layer with seamless real-time updates. Our system is contextually aware of over 1 billion FQDNs. The FQDN is fully qualified domain name. Think like help.dnsfilter.com is different than just dnsfilter.com. Those are technically different websites, so they're unique, fully qualified domains. But we don't stop there. We also aggregate over 85 third-party sources on top of our in-house intelligence to ensure we have the highest degree of confidence in our domain categorization. So remember earlier when I was talking about my wife's phishing fail, I guess you could say. So she clicked the link without hesitation because it looked right to her. But thanks to DNS Filter's roaming client, she was blocked from reaching that malicious site. So out of curiosity, I decided to look up the domain behind the text, southernconnectortools.com, on VirusTotal, a tool that checks with nearly 100 security vendors to see if they flagged it as dangerous. At the time, DNS Filter, we were the only vendor of identifying that domain as malicious. None of the others flagged it as such, meaning anyone relying on those tools would be completely exposed to this phishing attack. Here's the scary part. Even now, almost 3 months later, only 14 out of those 96 vendors recognize the domain as a phishing site. I'm not sure what's happening there, but it is kind of nerving that the rest of the industry still hasn't caught up with DNS filter months later. So this gap highlights a critical issue. Most security tools are reactive, waiting until a threat has already spread. DNS filter, on the other hand, is proactive. Our threat intelligence, powered by AI, doesn't rely on waiting for the industry to catch up. We are setting the pace here. It's built to spot these kinds of risks early, giving us a significant edge in protecting users from emerging threats. So let's talk about speed. No one really cares about DNS, let's be honest, unless it is slow or unreliable. And when it comes to speed, DNS filter is the fastest DNS resolver in North America. And usually we're the fastest in the world. Sometimes we're actually in second place. But second place, I guess, first loser. I've seen that on a movie. But the DNS resolution that we have is very fast. Milliseconds over the course of a year and in your multi-user environment really are a significant time saver. So we take speed very seriously around here because most of the time we're just a very fast DNS resolver. We're tasked with getting your clients answers to their queries, and only a small percentage of the traffic we process is actually blocked. So speed is a high priority. We use Anycast technology to ensure low latency and quick response times. This ensures that, no matter where you are in the world, you're accessing the web at the highest possible speed. If you're on vacation in the Maldives or you live in Australia and you're visiting San Francisco, you are always connected to the nearest node, getting the fastest speed that's available. So networks big and small trust DNS filter with their speed and reliability. So I'll be the first to admit that there is no silver bullet in cybersecurity. We all know that. Protective DNS alone is not enough. That's why DNS filter's ability to integrate seamlessly with existing security tools is one of our biggest strengths. We have PSA integrations with all the major players, and you can deploy with any RMM or MDM tool, whether you're using firewalls, endpoint protection, or identity management. DNS filter adds a critical layer without overlapping or creating redundancies. Instead of adding complexity, we just fit right in, enhancing your stack. You're strengthening your perimeter by implementing DNS filter, so those other tools have less heavy lifting to do. This integration really gives partners a peace of mind knowing that DNS filter works harmoniously with their current system. So we don't just hand over the keys and walk away at DNS filter. We're really invested in our partner success. We provide training to help your team understand, get the most out of our platform. I actually run those trainings, so you might see my smiling face on the videos. But our training programs are designed to ensure your staff really grasps the how to deploy, configure, and manage DNS filter effectively. And if any questions arise, our support team's just a call or click away. They're responsive and knowledgeable when you need them. And we know that timely, effective support can really make all the difference. So we prioritize being there for our partners. DNS filter doesn't just protect your network, it also helps you with compliance. We fulfill CIS, that's Center for Internet Security. CIS controls 9.2, which is use DNS filtering, 8.6, which is collect DNS query logs, and 4.9, which is configure trusted DNS servers. We also facilitate several other CIS controls. So if you haven't heard DNS filtering from your insurance provider yet, you probably will soon. And think about it from the insurer's perspective. Requiring DNS filtering, reduces the probability of a successful attack. It lowers the potential for large claims. It provides a measurable security control to assess that risk, and it demonstrates your commitment to cybersecurity. So for our partners, this means an extra layer of confidence, knowing DNS filter meets standards set by the big frameworks. And to make our solution even more accessible, we offer exclusive discounts for partners, making it easier to integrate DNS protection into your budget without compromising on quality or effectiveness. Security shouldn't come with a painful price tag. And with DNS filter, it doesn't have to. And with that, I'll hand it back over and invite everyone to some questions. So let's see what we have in the chat.
All right, let's indeed do that. I'm just throwing up this poll really quickly before we dive into the questions. But once again, I think by now you might recognize this poll. What additional information would you like about the DNS filter solution? Again, data sheets, white papers, case studies, demos, pricing details. You want to try this for yourself. This is the perfect place to get exactly what you're looking for and get the exact information you want to follow up with here after today's summit. So I'm going to keep that up during the Q&A. And with that, yeah, let's dive into some questions together, shall we, Mikey?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first one I've got here on the docket is, can you speak to how DNS filter protects against ransomware?
Sure. Ransomware is the threat I went over in that presentation, and it's very prevalent. And we identify domains that are associated with ransomware campaigns. So essentially, we have like a giant list that gets updated in real time that is identifying the domains associated with command and control servers, ransomware exploits, phishing exploits, and those are updated. So as they're discovered, your customers would be and your staff would be protected in real time.
Okay, excellent. I love your mention of speed and and your delivery in general, where you're like, not everyone really cares about DNS unless it's not working.
I know I care a lot about it. No one else I know, like in my personal life, cares too much about it unless it doesn't work.
That's it. And then they're like, hey, hello, I need you, please. So I like the preventative approach, however. So okay, so next question I've got here is, how is DNS filter deployed? Do you protect individual devices or only networks?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to deploy DNS filter. Like once you set up all your rules, then the goal is to get it active on devices. You can deploy at the network level very simply by changing the DNS forwarders of your networking gear or even a machine by itself. But we typically recommend installing our roaming client wherever possible. That would be on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and Chromebooks. And Linux too. If you get a little crazy with Docker, you can certainly do that. But the roaming client affords the more information about that specific user and about the network. So if a roaming client encounters some event, some block event or malware, visiting a malware site, we'll know the person that did that action, and you can reach out to them directly to figure it out. But at the network level, we really just know something at that network went to some malicious site. And that could be like a printer, IoT device, things that cannot run modern software.
Okay. That's great. I have a user question here. Can you set different policies based on the user?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's suggested with our roaming client. You can give your C-suite a very specific policy. Maybe it's a little more lax. They're allowed to use gambling websites or whatever. But then you can set, for example, the marketing team, a group of devices can have a specific policy, or an individual. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in who gets what policy.
Okay. And that can be, like you said, individual or groups and subgroups, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. We integrate with Active Directory, so we can match up with your OUs and groups there. And if you just assign a group in AD or Azure a certain policy, then that entire group will get that policy.
Okay, cool. I like that. A couple questions about kind of URLs and how they're tracked. So one here is that some threat actors are spoofing subdomains of legitimate security companies. For example, proofpoint.legitcompany.com. Does this product, as in DNS filter, protect from those types of threats?
Yeah, so that's talking about typo squatted domains. And yeah, we certainly protect against those. We would identify that as phishing, and we have a lot of heuristics working behind the scenes to identify, this is not the company that is trying to imitate. Obviously, it's a bit easier with, very large companies like Microsoft, Google, et cetera. But even your average company, we can identify typo squatted domains. And our AI models are actually getting more and more advanced as time goes on, as the data that we have gets analyzed further.
Gotcha. Okay, and someone was asking here, like, what role do tiny URLs play in the DNS world? How do you guys track and integrate that?
Well, luckily, those tiny URLs always end up at some other URL. There's also like CNAME flattening. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but there's redirects upon redirects upon redirects, and we know where the end result is. And if that end result is that phishing domain, then we can block that as well. So yeah, there are sophisticated methods that try to get around DNS filtering, but we know about them and combat against them.
Nice. Amazing. I like it. What else have we got here? A couple more, perhaps. This one is from Aaron. Aaron's asking, can I use DNS filter personally to protect my phone and laptop? I would imagine yes, but I guess maybe are there plans that are more personal versus industry based, and how does that play out?
You can certainly use it as like a home user. It's geared for business. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, certainly you could use it for yourself and your family and your loved ones. If you're, like a managed service provider, you could protect yourself. There's like NFR licenses. So we expect you to, dog food the product just like we do in house. So yeah, those NFR licenses are available, and you could buy it as like a, solo individual too, if you want.
Okay, nice. I like that. Okay, last question, and then we'll probably have to wrap this one. Someone's asking, how do you guys differ from Cloudflare? I don't expect you to know everyone out there, so I'll just see what you want to answer here.
Sure. So Cloudflare, their specialty is that authoritative DNS, but they do have a product that does, DNS egress protection, protective DNS, just like us. That product is a little bit more suited for small organizations, I guess you could say. But it is similar. There are some strengths and weaknesses to both products. I would say that our threat intelligence is really unmatched in the industry. But there's plenty of competition. We invite you to test different options and pick the best one for you. And we hope that's DNS Filter.
I love it. Excellent. Well, you've honestly been such a pleasure to speak with. It's been great to be able to pose these questions to you today. And then, as always, I like to give everyone a final call to action or some sort of final sign off. So feel free, go ahead.
Well, thanks everybody for having us. Check us out at dnsfilter.com. If you have any questions, reach out. Happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mikey. Absolute pleasure, and hope to have you back in the future.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for pitching those questions. Again, great engagement overall today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you also for answering this poll. We are about to wrap things up here. So again, if you have not yet checked out the handouts tab and grabbed the handouts in there from our presenters, this is the time. You definitely want to do that. There's also a link in the handouts tab for DNS Filter. So if you do want to book a personalized live demo and check that out, that'd be a great way to do it. Head to that link. They'll get a little bit of a sense of what you're looking for, what your organization's like, and you can book that demo right then and there. And with that, let's wrap things up with our final prize giveaway, and we will have you off with to the rest of your days. So let's hope you're lucky. Our final prize giveaway here, aside from another $300 Amazon gift card, is the grand prize of an Apple iPhone 16 Pro. Final reminder, you do need to be live and present here at the webinar to win. And with that, let's give these away. So gift card number 5 is heading out to Megan Bolin, who is from Illinois. And iPhone 16 Pro is going out to Aaron Netherton from Texas. huge congratulations there. And I'm going to do a quick recap of all the winners today. So if you did step away or missed your name being called, here we go. So the 5 gift cards are going out to Il Hyung Cho from California, Maria Hawkins from Ohio, Rudy De Silva from Georgia, Justin Schaefer from Maryland, and Megan Bolin from Illinois. The 3 PlayStations went out to Jay Howerton from Illinois, Lohana Sanchez from North Carolina, and Chuck Hicks from Kentucky. The Lego Star Wars AT-AT went out to Nicholas Brizzolata from Virginia, and the iPhone 16 Pro to Aaron Netherton from Texas. Congrats again, and we'll be reaching out to all of our lucky winners as well as those best question gift card winners after the summit. And again, congrats. That's awesome. Exciting stuff. Now, a quick call out. If you are here, you are obviously thinking about security. You may also want to check out ransomware.org. Everything you need to know about ransomware, the definitive ransomware resource. Check that out. This is a great way to stay in the know and have kind of a neutral source for all things ransomware. Now, if you have been enjoying the summit today and you're thinking, hey, I want to sponsor, I want to speak, I want to get involved, how do I do that? Well, you can reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com and get involved with an upcoming EcoCast, MegaCast, or Summit on the horizon. And finally, if you enjoyed everything today and, obviously we want to have you back, you want to learn some more, we have an awesome EcoCast taking place tomorrow. And this is all about solutions and tools that use AI to get more from your existing data. So, you've been collecting this data, you've been cataloging this data, and now how can you use AI to get more out of that data you already have and double down on that investment of collecting and organizing and keeping that data that you've got. So again, 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Thursday, November 14th. If you haven't already, you can sign up for that and learn a little bit more about AI and data. All right. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank our speakers from TierPoint, Zerto, Know-Before, Critical Start, and DNS Filter for making this summit possible. And I want to give a special thank you to all of you for attending the summit today, asking those great questions, and really bringing up the engagement around this conversation. This has definitely been such a valuable conversation around securing your borders, evolving each layer of your security program. I'm glad that you guys all took some time from your busy schedules today and spent it on the summit, learning and informing yourselves. And I hope you all got some interesting ideas and tips and you're ready to tackle and implement some of these opportunities at your organization. And of course, I hope you had some fun today as well. So before you take off, I just want to say a final thank you and hope to see you again soon on an upcoming webinar. Until then, have an absolutely magical rest of your days. Take care, everybody.